Welcome to Palm Bay Live. Celebrate 2 years in business. Welcome to Palm Bay Live. Celebrate 2 years in business.
And with no intentions of ever coming back. Students who have court order actions against them. Students that are not in attendance, whereabouts unknown, expelled students, just to name a few. So when we're viewing the data, it's obvious that if we have a decline slightly in our graduation rate, our dropout rate is going to increase slightly. When we look at other non-graduates, because they're not all just dropouts, so you have the others that are non-graduate. You have students that transfer out of cohort, could go into adult education, and we're unable to obtain a diploma. Students who receive a GED, students who are in a DJJ facility, whether it's in Brevard or in another district, students who receive a certificate of completion, or students who are still currently enrolled as a fifth-year senior. Those are all considered non-graduates, and those count against the graduation rate for the schools.
Board members, I know you've seen these data. Dr. Sullivan shared them with you. Many of Florida's districts have had similar profiles. As you can see, you have successes, you have opportunities for improvement. It's been a challenging year. And again, I know there are plans in place by district and by school to address the areas of most concern. So this is the area that, again, when we were going over the agenda for the presentation, we wanted to make sure we celebrated. It's a privilege to be in this district and to learn about the programs that you have. And you've recognized many students who have benefited from these programs. It's an amazing metric that you have here, moving from 65.3% to 72.9% college and career acceleration components. And you know that includes the academic acceleration metrics on AP, IB, or ACE, passing a dual enrollment course for college credit, and earning an industry certification. All that's moving in a phenomenal direction. So congratulations to all of you for supporting those programs, for your district staff, for the innovation, the foresight, for knowing when to remove programs that students are no longer interested in. It's a great use of your resources and your talent here in Brevard Public Schools.
May I just add one thing? Sure. On that? So you'll notice that the College and Career Acceleration, it says unofficial CC College and Career Acceleration. We received the data a couple of weeks ago, and Dr. Sullivan has been working with the schools. Right now, the schools have the opportunity to look at the data to see if there are any errors. So I've been closely working with the high schools to make sure that it is 100% accurate. That's why we don't have the state data. The state data will not be released until school grade, and it'll be an unofficial school grade this year, but College and Career Acceleration cells will be in there, and it'll be reported for all the schools, and it'll be official, and then we'll have the official state data.
So let's look at English language arts proficiency. And again, we're looking from a bit of a different lens where we're showing you not only your metric, but your rank in states. So you get a sense of how you compare statewide. You can also have your team look at this by comparable districts. I think that is very interesting to do as well. And for many years, a lot of the Central Florida districts collaborated. And when we would see different data sets, I recall many conversations with folks in Brevard and saying, you're doing awesome in ELA or mathematics. Can you tell us what you're doing? And we'll share what we're doing in some other areas. And it's just wonderful when we all work together like that as a Central Florida team. So we obviously always look at grade 6. And for your audience, it's important to know Brevard is at the top of the state in grade 6 ELA. We're going to see the same thing in math. And we always debate about that and look at the research. How much of a contribution is being at elementary toward that grade 6 metric? Is it because the kids are comfortable, they know the teachers, they're better prepared? But grade 6 for Brevard is the shining star, and congratulations on that. There's a lot of good work being done. As I said, as you look at your ranking, there's improved ranking in some of your grades, and that's where you focus. Focus on that positive. What are we doing that generated that improvement? And then you can go back and look how you could work a little bit differently in your other grades to attain that same type of a metric.
So when we look at the overall student achievement for all grade levels and for all students, we're looking at the percent at level 3 and above, or the proficiency, which is what the state is calling, well, not proficiency, now they call it on grade level performance, is what they call level 3 and above. We'll see that there is an increase, that Brevard is outperforming the state, and then there is a 5/10 of a percentage point improvement from 2021. Although when it was graduation rate, we looked at 2019 as the baseline data, 2020 and 2021 were skewed because of the waivers. So when you're looking at the overall achievement, whether it's subgroup data or by race, you have to take into consideration the growth that happened between 2021 and 2022, not going back to 2019, because there weren't really any mitigating circumstances that like waivers at for all students. So when we look at the white students, we noticed that it was a 3/10 of a percentage point, I'm sorry, increase. And again, we are outperforming the state. When we look at our Black African American students, we note that they've increased 2 percentage points from 2021 to 2022. When we look at the Hispanic students, we see that they are comparable to the state. However, they too have seen an increase. Although it's 4/10 of a point, it's still an increase. It's a movement in the right direction. When you look at the subgroup data, and ED is economically disadvantaged, those are your students that are free and reduced lunch. ELLs are your English language learners, and SWD are your students with disabilities. We note that the ELL and the economically disadvantaged students saw an increase. However, the SWD students maintain their level of proficiency.
Math proficiency is displayed in the same way so that you can see your performance over time, and then how your state ranking is moving. Again, many of your metrics for 22 improved, especially when you look back at 2019. That's the recovery that we're looking for. And then you have those areas where there's opportunities for some growth. So when we look at mathematics, again, we see that same grade 6 outstanding performance in the state. That is wonderful. For grade 8, I want to be very clear. Districts like Brevard that put the majority of their students who are in middle school in algebra and geometry have a low 8th grade percentage proficient. That, yes, we need to work with those students and improve that, but it's not the same population as districts who choose not to allow 7th or 8th graders to take high school level courses. So that's the trade-off there. And as long as you know that and your community knows that, that's a strength. Because once those 7th and 8th graders who are in your algebra and geometry courses successfully pass, they're going to take calculus with your teacher of the year. That's what they're prepared for. So that's a wonderful effort. It makes a lot of sense. Again, that doesn't mean we don't want to work with the other eighth graders that are in that standard course. But that's why that number looks the way it does.
Now, again, we're going to look at the percent at level 3, scoring at level 3 and above. Similar story like ELA, math, we are outperforming the state, and then there was a 2.5 percentage point increase. As you look at the slides, you'll notice that we did slightly better in math when compared to 2021. When you look at the white students, although we are not outperforming the state, we still saw an increase of 2.4 percentage points. When you look at the Black African American students, they had an increase of 3.1 percentage points, which is significantly higher than the students, the overall performance, and the white peers. And remember, they also saw a 2 percentage point increase in ELA. So for our Black African American students, they did much better when compared to 2021. When you look at our Hispanic students, we see that they had a gain of 3.4 percentage points, which is the most significant for the math categories. And when you look at the subgroup data, you'll see that the economically disadvantaged students had a 3.4 percentage point increase. So in summary, what we could say about the data when compared to 2021 is that Brevard students are moving in the right direction.
Well, thank you, Ms. Francis, again for all that hard work and for your support as we prepared this information. Thank you, Dr. Schiller, for allowing us to share these data. We appreciate that. And as you can see, we've gone over the discussion points with you, very high level, just information, state data, not data that we generated, can be found on the state website, and you just pull together what you need to look at. So in summary, what are some key opportunity metrics that you might consider as a board? Obviously, graduation rate and your ranking in the state. You would want to celebrate that college and career acceleration. Awesome, awesome work. In the area of your academic performance, everyone's working on proficiency, but in particular, looking at learning gains. Every student, every year, a learning gain. That's how we move systems and move districts, with your lower quartile being a target population, because of all students, they have more opportunity to make a learning gain. And when they do make those gains, they're getting closer and closer to proficiency. You have these metrics in your strategic plan. They're there. So you're aware, you're working on them. As you're thinking about your budget priorities, and board members, I don't envy you at all. And I've shared with some staff, the hardest job is deciding among multiple goods that you're being asked to support. But as an instructional leader, I have to say student achievement, number one, and you know how to do that. I trust that. You'll be able to align your budget. Another area for you to think about is monitoring in a very public forum like you're doing tonight. So as you're going through your progress monitoring, this year it's all up in the air because no one knows really what all the numbers mean. But as you progress into the next school year, it's good to bring data to the board in a public way and let the stakeholders know. Then they'll support the work that you're committed to doing. Accountability for all staff. Everybody owns it. And transparency. These are data. They're not good. They're not bad. They are. And what you do with them is what's going to make a difference to serve every student with excellence as the standard. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Cody and Ms. Francis. Would any board members wish to discuss? Go ahead, Ms. Jenkins.
Thank you. I appreciate you presenting that to the public. I want to make it clear that this isn't the first time we're seeing this information. One time we had a very intentional, brutal presentation by Dr. Mullins, where I feel like it was probably the first time we were, again, very intentional about the areas in which we are not performing. And back in October from Dr. Sullivan and Miss Klein. So this information shouldn't be shocking to anybody. I think that it's still worth highlighting the data that's in here that alarms me every single day. I talk about it every time I have an opportunity to talk about it, which is that our white students are either overperforming or equally performing to our state, and our Black and African American students are underperforming. And we have a 30% gap now in our ELA performance of our Black students, 14% for our Hispanic students compared to their white peers. And in math, there's a 33% gap for our African American students and 15% for our Hispanic students. And of course, as we broke down to other subgroups when it comes to economically disadvantaged, as well as our students with disabilities, those gaps are just as wide, if not wider. So I appreciate your comment of it's important to be transparent, and I'm going to add the word intentional again, in order for our stakeholders to have buy-in as to why we need to do the work that we need to do. Because as intentional as we've been to this information, or with this information, and as focused as our district leaders and our teachers have been, it's difficult to feel we have buy-in from the community that supports our schools to make a difference for these students' lives. And clearly, we need to make a change. And I know certain communities have been screaming for a change, have been screaming for data, have been screaming for a plan. And I think those are the areas that we need to be more transparent and intentional about. I appreciate this data being presented again, but I would love for our staff to have the opportunity to present what they are actually doing right now in the moment to tackle these challenges, so that our community is aware that we aren't leaving them behind, and that we're not just reporting these numbers and ignoring it and trying to continue to do the same thing over and over again. I think we need to have a really prime opportunity for our staff and our teachers to highlight what it is they do on a daily basis to make a difference in every single one of our students' lives.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell.
Thank you, ladies. And Dr. Cody, it was nice to hear you from the microphone. I just wanted to, for the public who's not aware, and you guys explained it with the difference with the dropout rate and the non-graduates, but sometimes I think when the public sees even a graduation rate of 90% and we all celebrate, go, oh, that's so great, that's so wonderful, and they go, what, 10% of your kids are dropping out? And that's not the case. That's doesn't mean that 10%, that just means that 10% are not graduating on time with the class that they started with as freshmen. And there are some that drop out, and some that even go on to adult ed, but they don't get counted. They may graduate not just with a GED, but with a high school diploma, but it's not with their cohort, and so they don't get counted. So it's not that we're not getting kids across the finish line and into the workforce necessarily. But I think that's just an important distinction to make, because like sometimes we'll, that's so low, and it's something we definitely need to work on. It's interesting, board, because this morning our new charter school that's coming next year is a unique charter school. They are specifically targeted to dropout prevention, and they're going to catch, their goal is to catch the kids who have such a low GPA and are so many credits behind that they literally cannot get across the finish line on time, and they're affecting our grad rate. And as a organization, they're affecting our grad rate in a negative way. As an individual, they could potentially be on a path just to quit. And so it's going to fill a niche that even it will be even unique from adult ed. And so these are some kids that aren't going anywhere. And so it's such a unique program. If you haven't gotten to talk with them, they were here this morning getting onboarded. That is opening in the Melbourne area in the fall, and they're already talking to our schools because they specifically target an area that has multiple schools in the area, so they can work with our counselors at our schools and help identify who are those kids that are on the edge of dropping out for whatever reason. And they also provide things like transportation, help with childcare for those students who maybe are out because they're having to take care of younger siblings or their own child. And so that, I think that is something that will help us move that target in a positive direction, even in a small way. Thank you for pointing out our 6th grade success. Maybe that's a model we don't want to mess with. I'm Miss Francis. I know this is, look into your crystal ball. This year we're doing FAST and not FSA. And so I know we're kind of starting all over again. So when we start talking about data next year, we'll be able to compare to the state, not that next year, actually with our current year data. We'll be able to compare to the state because they'll have theirs, but we really can't do last year to this year, right? How do you think, how are we going to be able to see that progress in these groups or overall because the testing changed?
So I think it's really important to understand that this is a standard setting. Once the standards are set, then they'll send out another file. It's a retrofitted file. And in that file, it'll have the comparison of how the students scored this year in comparison to what the new standards are or the new cut scores are.
Okay.
And then we'll be able to use the PM3 new cut scores once that retrofitted file is released to compare it to PM1 for next year.
Okay.
So it'll give us the ability to see how did the students end at the end of 3rd grade in comparison to PM1 for 4th grade.
Okay. And again, we will not have school grades for this year, correct?
We are going to have an informational school grade, and there won't be learning gains, which is always hurtful to our lower socioeconomic schools that depend on those learning gains, because that's, they may not have 60% of their students scoring at level 3 or above, but they certainly have those high learning gains. So
Right.
This year it'll only be based on the 3 categories of ELA, math, and science for
Right.
the elementary.
Right. So and then
And then
next year.
civics for middle
Right.
school. And
So we'll kind of be able to see what we would have gotten, what grade we would have gotten if there had been grades, kind of like during the COVID year,
yes.
correct? COVID
Yes.
years, I should say. Okay. And then I appreciate Dr. Cody, you challenging us as we move forward thinking about the budget, because there are lots of things shouting out for our attention and shouting out for our priorities. But I don't know what the solutions are. I think the staff has been tasked to bring us some solutions when we talk about budget priorities. But these supporting the work in the classrooms, whether it's IAs or the programs that work and the training, the whatever it is, getting more whatever it might, we're going to have to talk about the budget. We're going to talk about what we're doing with that last piece of the millage that we keep tossing around. We could do this, we could do that. There's so many important factors to that, but we really are going to have to focus in on this as our number one priority, because this is, it's not just about, getting to be an A-rated school, but this is what our goal is, to get these kids across the finish line.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Mr. Trent.
Yes, again, thanks for all your hard work. I know dealing with these numbers can be tedious, and again, not good, not bad, just is. I'm going to say what you said, Ms. Campbell, but we are now going to be tasked using this data to come up with our priorities in the budget, and it's going to be hard to not do that now that we've seen these, and like you said, they're not new, but it's. We're kind of forced now, to put our money where the data says we need to put it, and I look forward to that challenge. But it's going to be very difficult to make some of those decisions. But again, thank you for all your work that you've been doing.
Ms. Wright.
Yeah, thank you for this report. I think one of the things that we tend to measure success differently, right? So sometimes it's graduation, it's how well we're doing on a test. I think one of the things that we are seeing here is our college and career acceleration. Like that's a successful route, even if that means it's not a graduation. it could still be, I mean, if they got a GED and they went to college, that could still be a successful route. So I I like what's here. There's room for improvement. I think if we start younger, that K through 3, we really can plant some seeds that we will see flourish as they go through the rest of their academic career. So thank you guys for taking the deep dive and giving us the report. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming forward and presenting this. Dr. Schiller, I'm going to come to you next. I just wanted to say what Ms. Campbell, and echoing what Ms. Campbell and Dr. Schiller have been saying, is this is a charter school that's coming in and innovating and taking some of our lowest people. As a former teacher I used to teach all day, and then I would go coach, and then I would teach adult ed, right? So many of the students that are in that dropout prevention and all those other pieces would end up in my adult ed class at night up in Cocoa. And I know the struggles that we face to try to identify those people, pull them in, educate them, and get them across the finish line. So I know that was exacerbated by COVID. Many people know this, but if you don't, many of our low socioeconomic areas were hurt by COVID because of the ability to understand, to log on and everything else, which hurt many of our overall grades and many of the advancements moving forward. I do want to say that it echoes to everybody else that they said also. Teacher turnover, teacher vacancies, substitutes. You look at your most, the areas that Ms. Jenkins was so explained so well, is in those areas where those students are at is where we see the most of those items. And these are things that we as a board should be tasked, that even though we can no longer say, it's one of those things that everybody has it, that everybody has the vacancies. We have to give 110% to get there. I think we can come up with innovative ways to attract more teachers back to the marketplace, attract some programs to help out our low socioeconomic and African-American families. Before the meeting, I went up to Mr. Bryant and I said, it's time now. This is the time that we're going to be calling on each other. What you see here is this will not get better until we all are together, until we all start identifying and really break it down. And I think that that's needed in order to do this. I think that we all in general agree where we need to be focusing. And I think that we're looking forward to many of the next school board meetings to do that. Mr. Schiller or Dr. Schiller, your floor.
Yes, thank you. You summarized pretty much of what I would concur with, is that this fine presentation of data that is extant and in the district, and taking a look at it shines a spotlight so that when on Thursday we meet, the board can look at basically the data as an indicator. And you always have to use data to guide your thinking as to its priorities so that it can adjust and consider how some of the initiatives shall be funded, as well as the challenges. And fortunately, that school is opening to serve a particular population, but to what extent we need to be thinking about ahead of that in terms of what else we can offer here. And so I thank you to professionals and all the staff who've contributed to this, and I'm particularly appreciative of the board's attention to the details and you're setting the stage for and recognizing we have work to do. You have work to do for the future. And now we can pinpoint and spotlight what can be done and then marshal the resources if it is as it must be, a priority. You know, we like to say, all students count or no one counts, no one excluded. Thank you very much, ladies. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. I think what I would like to do is take a brief 10-minute, 5 to 10 minute break. If you guys can, use the restroom and come back. We are now on to the public comments portion of the meeting. Agenda items. Disruptive, threatening, or violent behavior will not be tolerated at the podium. Please address the chair. We have 30 speakers, which will each receive 3 minutes. I will call up 3 speakers at a time. Pursuant to board policy in tonight's motion, you are allowed to address board members by name, but not staff or the public. Where the hell did it go? First 3 speakers are Angela Sider, Scott Jost, Bernard Bryant. Angela, please come up. This is gonna be fun. Here we go.
Yeah.
Thank you, board, and thank you, Dr. Schiller. My name is Angela Cedar, and I'm the media specialist at Coquina Elementary. A media specialist is a teacher in the media center that helps students learn to love reading by assisting them to find the right fit books, collaborates with staff, curates a collection of books, trains staff with technology, and works with the SIP and SAC to analyze the needs of the school to help all be successful. The media center can be compared to a retail facility like Publix or Walgreens. Just like a retail facility, the media center has products that the end user, the students, parents, and teachers need. In both retail and the media center, products or books are checked out, returned, need reshelving, repair, and to be processed. Unlike in our media centers, a retail outlet has different people doing each of the tasks. Could you imagine returning to a retail store that has one person helping 20 people at one time while performing other duties? For retail, that is an epic fail. Our previous board and superintendent decided to remove our part-time media assistants to save funds. In doing so, all media specialists were left to perform the duties of 2 people. We were told, oh, volunteers could help run the media center. Well, imagine the complications of having volunteers run a retail facility. The lack of volunteers, and consistent volunteers at that, has put all of the responsibility on the media centers. At least at the elementary level, we have 7 classes a day with 1 planning period. My collection has over 9,000 books. We have a required curriculum to teach, and it is a different one for each grade level. Daily tasks include, but are not limited to, book check-in and out, fixing books, placing them to the side for repair at a later time, collecting fines, assigning fines, aiding students and teachers with technology issues, attempting to put books away, and organizing shelves and assisting students with finding books. This is while teaching the state curriculum, social skills, and enrichment. Additionally, as needed, I teach the Monique Burr curriculum, state mandates above the standard curriculum, administer surveys for the county, and am pulled to test students. Book processing and care is constant. Fundraising is necessary to purchase new books as the publishing world never sleeps. Lunch duty calls, as does aiding other coverage. If these tasks are not enough, the state has added vetting to our to-do list, and media specialists are the only ones by law that can vet and process books. Processing and reshelving takes about approximately 1 minute per book. For example, just handling 500 books of repair reshelving can add an additional 8 hours of work. These are weekly tasks. The shelves need constant organizations. Students do not put books back where they belong. Neither do customers when they change their mind. We can hire assistants to help with the daily tasks. This will help us with the customer service. We can take media off the wheel at the elementary level for 1 day a week and not pull us to cover. Allow us the opportunity. The goal is to get books in the hands of students, and this will
Thank you very
absolutely make
much.
the goal. Thank
Next
you.
speaker, Mr. Scott Jost. Mr. Scott Jost, Bernard Bryant, Kyle Savage, please.
Good evening. I am a media specialist at an elementary school here in Brevard. I come to you today to ask for your help. As a result of newly passed legislation, media specialists across the state are being required to do a tremendous amount of additional clerical work. Among these requirements is the expectation that media specialists personally know and vet every book in their school, including every book in their classroom. We need to verify that the book is appropriate for school, but also appropriate for the age level of the students in each class. This involves looking up every single book online, checking reviews, checking for age appropriateness, and for its content. This work isn't really difficult, but it takes an impossible amount of time to complete. Last week, for example, on our teacher workday, I spent the entire day vetting classroom library books. The average time that it took me for each book was just over 1 minute. By the end of the workday, I hadn't even finished the first teacher's list of 371 books. The average class at my school has 286 books. Going with this 1 minute per book ratio, the average class takes a minimum 5 hours of vetting time, assuming there are 0 distractions or breaks on my part. Multiply that by the 39 classrooms in my school, and you can start to see my dilemma. If I did nothing but vet books all day long, it would take me 25 days of nonstop work. But I'm also required to teach 8 grade level classes. I have VPK at my school. So it's really 84 work days of me vetting classroom library books during every spare moment of my planning time to complete the vetting process at my school. I have 15,000 books in my school media center that need to be vetted as well. So we can add another 108 days. This is a total of 192 work days needed. That's more than a whole year to review the books at my school. In addition to vetting books, of course, I also have the responsibility of planning lessons, adding newly purchased books into my inventory, running a live morning news show every day, and reshelving about 2,000 books a month that have been checked out by my students. As I mentioned at the beginning, we need your help. I'm fully aware that you, the board, can't change the state law, but you can do your part in helping us follow the law. I ask you a few things. I ask you to find the budget to bring back our assistants. This will alleviate the daily processing and shelving tasks that were placed on our shoulders last year when the assistant position was cut. I would love for you to offer all media specialists a yearly stipend, just like you do for ESE, for all the added clerical work that we are now required to do. Another solution that can be done tomorrow is to put in place tomorrow is to coordinate with our school leaders so we don't get assigned intervention groups or as last minute substitutes, or in the case of one school, a ESOL coordinator, so that we can finish the tasks that are required to us. Lastly, I invite all of you and all of the parents that are concerned about the books in our libraries to come visit our libraries, come volunteer. There is absolutely plenty of work to be done.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Jost. Appreciate your time. Mr. Bryan, please come speak. Kyle Savage, Benny Jackson.
Good evening. Is it okay to start?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you so much, Mrs. Susan and Mr. Schiller for what I saw today. Thank you for your transparency with the data. And to be honest with you, I think I have all of those data memorized. For the last 3 or 4 years, I've been studying the data, looking at where opportunities are, but I was very much encouraged today. And thank you, Mr. Trent, with some of the words you said, that we're going to invest in those areas that really need help the most. I just want to remind you that when you look at the data, African-American students, the gap is around 30 to 35%. And I'm losing sleep with that data every day. I work with a lot of children every day, working with them, mentoring them, trying to give them opportunities to really learn reading and math. If you can't do reading and math, our kids are going to struggle. And when you look at the clearinghouse data, a lot of our kids, only 40% of our African-American kids are going to college. And only 60% of our white kids are going to college. And when you look at the poverty rate in our county, some subgroups are at 74% in poverty. So I really thank you so much. I really want you to give us your strategic plan, how you're going to attack this, how you're going to help every child, because every student matters. So if you will, please consider this. If you will look at those Title I schools that need help the most, that need opportunities in reference to resources and IAs, I think we have a tremendous opportunity there as well. But I want to challenge you. I believe we have some difficult days ahead, but I think if we work together as a team, we can make that happen. I'm very concerned with HB1, how that's going to impact our students, how it's going to impact our public schools, and how it's going to impact our facilities, and how it's going to impact our capital. And I'm very concerned about that. So I would ask this board, if you will, do a trial budget on worst case scenario with some assumptions on what those impacts are going to be. Because when that time hits us, and it's going to be very soon, we're going to be reactive instead of proactive. So the community is asking you to take some time, provide us some numbers on what the impact is going to be toward our staffing, what it's going to be toward our capital, and what it's going to be toward our resources, because those days going to hit us very, very soon. So thank you, Dr. Schiller, for allowing the data to be presented today. And if Mr. Bryan could do anything, let me know.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bryant. Kyle Savage, then Benny Jackson. Kyle Savage, then Kyle. Sir, if we have Kyle go first. You okay? You okay? All right, we'll switch it around. Mr. Jackson, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I thought I was next. My name is Benny Jackson. I'm the current president of the South Brevard NAACP. And I would like to just follow on with what Mr. Bryan had asked related to the data that was presented today and the mission of this board to serve every student with excellence as the standard, to be able to see that implemented with this budget that's going to be made, because that addressing the equality and the equity means that where the problems are, additional resources and additional monies will be provided. And so I challenge this board to represent that so that the community can see that. And then I have a different topic. I have a question related to the discipline policies related to hate speech. When I look at the discipline policy, I didn't see any language that was directly related to hate speech. And as a result of that, those situations are not being addressed, in my opinion, appropriately, because it's not being elevated to a level that it needs to be. And so I would ask this board to be sure to include language that identifies that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do you want to speak? You want to speak? Wait until after. Be fine. Mr. Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Susan, Dr. Schiller, members of the board. I want to start by thanking Scott and Angela, the first two speakers that are amazing media specialists in Brevard County, and also amazing BFT members. I want to point that out. But I thank them because they reached out with an issue. They want to solve, they want to find a solution, and they brought together a very large group of media specialists to me and our union to talk about the issues facing them. And they took the courage to come here tonight and talk. So I just want to say thank you for that. I want to highlight what we're asking for. We're not asking for the change of law. We're not asking you to do something you can't do. We're asking for a clear expectation of what is expected out of the media specialist and a plan on how they're going to do that. Yes, that may be more dollars. That may be more financial resources, but it may be looking at what we're currently asking them to do and adjusting that. It may be looking at what technology is available to help them with this process, because there's a lot of school districts in Florida that are going through the same issue. So we may be able to find some creative solutions to help them out. And then finally, I just want to state their goal, our goal, and I know every board member's up their goal is to put books in children's hands. And the research shows, I did a bunch of research on this. The state of South Carolina did a bunch of research on this. The research showed every dollar spent in media centers, on media specialists, on library collections, increased literacy scores. Other states have found the same thing. The research shows every time we put a book in a child's hand, that improves literacy scores. So that's our ask. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Savage. Miss Julie Bywater, Diana Haynes, and Shane McClally. Miss Julie.
Good evening. I'm Julie Bywater. I am a member of the local Brevard chapter of Moms for Liberty. But tonight I am here about your signs. I have challenged this board for months on end. Every time I got up here and spoke to you, I challenged you about these signs. And tonight it happens. We've got this great sign in the back of the room, and I know that the people watching on the video, the YouTube, they can't see that sign. But you see the sign up front that says to serve every student with excellence as the standard. That sign is also in the back of the room. So when I challenged the board months and months ago to have that sign so that they were looking at it every time they were up there on the board, that sign is there. And I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I thought it was something that the community needed, the board needed, and it looks great. You guys did a great job. I love the big sign in the back of the room. And I think it's really important to take the time to recognize these wins where we have come together, where we have challenged each other, and we have said, hey, let's do this. It's the right thing to do. I know that many people in this room don't always come together in these situations, but you know, we can all work together. And I really appreciate you doing that for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Diana Haynes, Shane Mulcahy, and Elmer Roy, please.
Hello there. I'm a
Diana Haynes.
parent and one of my children
Miss
is
Diana Haynes.
non-binary. I don't send
Is that-
kids to public
Miss-
school.
Miss, what is your name?
Sorry,
What's your name, ma'am?
My name is Emer Mulcahy, Emer Roy Mulcahy. My child is going next, right
Yeah,
behind me.
no. you're-
Shane Mulcahy.
Yeah, no, you're, Miss Diana Haynes is up next. Okay, okay, no, okay. Thank you. No, you're good. And it's Elmer Roy after you.
Yeah, I didn't hear
So
the
it's
other
Diana
one.
Haynes and Elmer Roy. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, Mr. Susan, would you mind waiting until people aren't clapping because we don't hear you when you call the names?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
thanks. So I'm still a parent of a non-binary youth. I don't send my kids to public ed for them to be hothouse flowers protected. How is it the mission statement for excellence for gay or trans existence to be removed from books, etc.? Showing them and peer students that humans like them belong in the world. It's also dehumanizing to refuse to address students how they wish, not excellence, and then purport to be concerned for their survival and well-being, as happened earlier. Predetermination and censorship is proven by a board reducing media specialists or assistants from their core expertise. It's like removing a surgeon from a brain surgery team and surprised when Frankenstein evolves. Isolating and targeting groups is foreseeable. They'll be seen as different by peers, and no one wants their existence eradicated in school and society. Unless you're an extremist with an agenda most school taxpayers do not want. This is not serving every student with any excellence. Parents do not want academic-only focus. The parts being removed, queer inclusion, growth from learning real history, are key parts of social and emotional education. Please keep in mind respect is two-way, and asking students your policies are targeting to be respectful it does not have a foundation in reality. We would rather be safe if focus was not excluding queer and non-binary students. Sorry. Last week I was in Tallahassee trying to have equality restored to queer students and to plead for their lives because right now they are in danger. And books are being banned disproportionately to books banned for cis peers. Earlier on in this meeting, it showed no support for district staff and it undermined the superintendent staff oversight role. 3 members showed complete lack of compassion for a Brevard employee and willingness to expose 2 lawsuits by not using a qualified legal counsel. Also, Section 504 is a key part of education law, so that person had direct experience on its implementation. Finally, Mr. Susan, I absolutely respect your chair and it looks very comfortable up there.
Thank you. Next up is Miss Diana Haynes, please. Then it's Shane. No. Oh, well, who is she then?
Good evening.
Oh, okay. Just come up and go.
The Colorado Springs shooter was identified as non-binary. The Denver shooter was identified as trans. The Aberdeen shooter was identified as trans. And the Nashville shooter was identified as trans. What I witnessed here in this room at the last board meeting was beyond appalling. Usually I'm chastising you all regarding your decorum up there, or some members. But this time, I'm chastising the members in the audience because I want to know how dare they stand at this podium and threaten the chairperson, threaten Mr. Trent, and just make the most outlandish, ridiculous statements. The threats were just unbelievable. We should not allow that, and they should be banned. There was a woman that stood here and not once, but twice referenced supporting the Second Amendment. Now, for those of us that conceal carry or avid gun users, we know what that means. We all know what that means. So I see that as a direct threat. And I'd like to know that this board is going to take steps that when individuals come up here and make those types of physical threats against you or people in the audience or anyone, that they are barred from coming back into this room because you put us all at risk. That's one thing. The other thing I would like to talk about, since this kind of has to do with decorum, I know that I have spoken about Ms. Jenkins in the past regarding comments. I have spoken also about the lawsuit with the Steele family and the fact that she is the only member in a list of plaintiffs or defendants that is being sued for defamation because her posts were on her official page. But now we've gone to Twitter. And Twitter's just such a wonderful thing. I'd like to get an opinion on this, not only of the public, but maybe the board. Dear Florida legislatures, I currently have my period. I talked to my 6.5-year-old about it when she saw the tampon string. Makes you uncomfortable? Try a Midol. Are you serious? You're an adult woman. I feel for your 6-year-old child that is what she's going to have to remember.
You'll address me as
Thank
the
you.
school
Oh,
chair.
to you? I thought we could address board
You
members.
can, but you just have to do it through me. That's
Oh,
all.
okay.
You
Well,
can.
then.
You just have to address me.
All right.
Thank you.
So I've made my point. The last point, public records. November, I have been requesting for a videotape. We all know the conversation. Okay. I would like that tape by tomorrow, or I'm going to have to pursue the state statute on failure to maintain public records. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haynes. Next up is Elmer Roy, Catherine Ebersberger, Kimberly Botello. Yep, Elmer Roy, please.
So I don't know what the
Here we
last
go.
speaker was on about with the all trans people are spooky, violent, and will literally murder your children thing. I would like to point out that the Denver shooter was I would like to point out that the Denver shooter was precariously identified as transgender by a single police chief in a press conference. It has not since been confirmed by anyone, and it was and the person above them made no comment about it when asked. Media specialists are really important. You should probably not remove them from the process of banning books. Also, I don't really know what the whole thing about book banning being a myth is. I guess you could say that it's the unilateral removal of content from school libraries, but that's kind of a mouthful. And I know since Matt, your finger's probably pretty itchy to mute me, given what happened last time.
Mr. Roy, please stick to the topic, please.
Okay. My topic was pretty vague. It was student issues. You're a governing entity over schools. I am a student, therefore, and I am in a school. Therefore, you are part of the topic. Cool?
Please keep going, Mr. Roy.
Okay. School boards are allegedly apolitical. Don't use them to campaign for DeSantis. And Jeannie Weenie, you're the you represent every
So,
student.
Mr. Roy, I'm going to stop for a second. Using coined terms and names and nicknames and all that stuff's not appropriate. If you can just speak to the topic, I'd greatly appreciate it. And thank you.
Sorry, I wasn't aware that the rule was that I couldn't hurt your feelings. I thought that it was that I couldn't say disruptive things or swears or stuff like that. I guess that should have probably been made clear beforehand, but good to know. So Jean Trent, representative of District 2. Over the thing you said a few meetings
Mr.
ago.
Roy, if you can address me as the chair, please. Just stop, just stop.
Okay, cool. I, I'm really sorry to your chair. It has a really disgusting person on it. Very corrupt, inept, inebriated, invertebrate. And bye, since you seem to want to interrupt me at every single stage over the most minor things you can do. Bye-bye.
You good? Just stop, just stop. There we go. Next up, Miss Catherine Ebersberger.
My name is Kathy Ebersberger, and I'm a concerned taxpayer and community member. The 34% proficiency rate in ELA and 31% proficiency rate in math for Black students cannot be tolerated. We have an awesome staff and teachers, and it's not their fault, but clearly Black students are being left behind. And I ask, with this kind of rate, how is this different from the segregated schools that our students' grandparents attended? We must do better for our African American students, and not only in the area of student achievement. This year, the board has heard repeatedly about the disproportionate number of African American students caught up in the discipline process. This disproportionality persists at every stage. I've complimented you before on the energy you brought to attacking the discipline problem plaguing our schools. You brought community leaders and union representatives together in a workshop to discuss the problem. You heeded the union's call for changes by reconvening the discipline committee. Yet the Black community leaders' voices had no effect. They repeatedly stated that we needed to know why the policy had a disproportionate effect on Black students. Mr. Bryan and the NAACP have pled for an answer. Why are Black students being caught more than white students? And you have apparently done nothing to answer the important question. I don't have any idea why there is this disparity. It might be innocent, but whether you intend to or not, your silence gives the appearance of not caring about Black kids. I pray this is merely a question of dropping the ball and is not intentional. But imagine what this says to our Black students and families. They might think you don't care. You think Black students behave worse than white kids. You think Black students deserve to be punished more than white kids. Critical race theory can be stated as a theory that the rules and regulation of government entities such as school boards are stacked against people of color. We aren't allowed to teach CRT, but I want to remind you that there are different ways of teaching. And ignoring the fact that Black students are disproportionately being caught up in our discipline rules just might teach our students that CRT is not a theory, but a fact.
Thank you, Ms. Ellery. Kimberly Botello, Christine Stannis, Karen Colby, please. Go ahead.
All right. Good evening. My name is Kimberly Botello, and I'm a media specialist at Sunrise Elementary School. I was a classroom teacher for 18 years and have been a teacher librarian for 8 years. I am the 2012 Brevard County Teacher of the Year. I only mention this title because I proudly represented Brevard County at the state level in 2012, and I stand before you now, still proud of my profession, but I'm asking you to consider the heavy responsibilities of a media specialist with the passage of this new law. Let me start by sharing you what my day looks like as a media specialist. Sunrise currently has 800 students. I start the morning with a live news program with students as anchors and technicians. I write the script for the show during my planning, which airs each morning in every classroom in the school. Next, I teach 7 classes a day from kindergarten through 6th grade, and I have 26 through 37 students in each class. I teach 7 classes a day. I start the class with a read aloud that supports a standard, add a media connection, then I tie a hands-on STEM lesson. that includes engineering and designing with Kiva planks, force and motion with gears, building butterflies with Connects, just to name a few. In addition to teaching a lesson, I check out and reshelve books for 800 students. My students can check out 2 books. That means I'm checking out and reshelving as many as 1,200 to 1,600 books a week. I also purchase new books, put those books in the system, repair the books, send out late notices, run a reading incentive program, and schedule and run a book fair. I do this all without a media assistant. The job was cut because of budgetary needs. Brevard County has had media assistants for 24 of the 26 years that I've been teaching. There is an overwhelming need for assistance now more than ever. Now, on top of what I do daily, I need to vet 14,000 books in my library, as well as classroom libraries. If each of the 40 teachers at Sunrise had 200 books in their classroom library, I need to vet an additional 8,000 books. I cannot do this without assistance. We need help to follow the new law. Because after all, we are the only ones at the school who can vet the books, since the state has deemed us the only qualified people in the state who can do the vetting. So we need assistants back in the library to do the clerical day-to-day duties so that we can properly vet the books. Also, we deserve to be on the committee reviewing the books that are challenged. So you're letting media specialists vet the books at the schools, but not have a seat at the table when books are challenged. Does that make sense? I am on the state SSYRA junior committee. I reviewed 500 books to pick the top 15 books in the state. Yet, with my expertise, they say that's a conflict. Isn't that a bonus? Now, above all the things I do as a media specialist, my most important job is to foster, So in closing, I'm asking the board simply for help. We need your help to follow the new law. So look into the budget to find a way to add media assistance back.
Thank you, Ms. Botello. I
So we can
appreciate
foster
your
the love of reading.
conversation. Ms. Christine Stannis, Karen Colby, Albert Callahan.
Hi, my name is Christine Staniak. I'm the media specialist at Satellite High School. I'm just coming to address questions to the board regarding the book consideration policy. Today I had the pleasure of listening briefly to the board meeting that you guys had. When we talked about the library policy, I did not see any outside sources being brought in to address any of the issues or ask for any input. However, when the policy of dress code came up, I noticed Jean Trent said we needed to call on the principal's experience. Matt, Susan, you said that we needed to bring stakeholders to come in and the principals know what's best. However, when the book reconsideration policy came out, nobody addressed anything with any media specialist, any principals, any stakeholders. It was just rewritten as is. We do have experience, and I feel like our experience is being discounted. The biggest issue I think teachers are facing right now, besides discipline and pay and lack of support, is that policy is done to us. Policy is not done with us. You are not including us in the conversations, and we are the people that know what is going on in the schools. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next up, Ms. Karen Colby, Albert Callahan, and Lindsay Blair.
Hey y'all, I'm a mom of 6 kids that all went through Brevard Public Schools successfully, and most of them graduated with a 3.8 or higher GPA. My kids were not discipline problems, not one of them. They also were good kids with volunteering in the community. Now, with that said, I'm also an expert at this media material issue because of having to deal with 6 kids of different ages, different interests and everything. I became quite adept at looking at these books. I've been helping read some of the ones that are questionable. I just want to assure anybody listening to me that there's nothing personal in any of those books. It doesn't matter if I like trans people or not. What I don't like to see is pictures of naked children in these books at schools and interacting with adults in a way that's inappropriate. Most of the books that I reviewed have that in there. I can't think of a single educational need for seeing a naked child interacting with an adult naked body at school or at home. If people choose to do that at home, I respect it. Now, about betting these books, Parents can vet. We make an interactive forum. I heard y'all are making a new forum for the book challenges. We can do them online and have this issue handled in no time. We can do as many as 50 challenges a day, get them settled. If you guys don't have a problem with the books and the nudity that we're finding and the words that I can't say on this microphone, but you want a 5-year-old to look at, I think that we can help you. We'll go through the books, any books that need vetted. I will find a committee of people who will vet them fairly and accurately. I like the way they're laughing, you see, because we're trying to keep the children as children. We don't need to have kids violating ethics and other normalities of life just because they choose to be different. And I think different is great. I wasn't a normal child in that I wasn't a bookish and I wasn't a easily labeled child. I did a lot of things, and there are kids that you can't label, and I respect that. But when they want labeled, by God, they're up here ready to fight for it, and they're insulting you. And I apologize as a parent to anyone listening who heard the words coming out of these kids' mouths, directed at my respected school board members. We worked very hard to put you guys there. So if you need help from an experienced media specialist, I read every single book at the schools I went to. I was their library aide all the time there. That's Ocean Breeze, Hoover, and Satellite. I read every stinking book. I still remember my library card number 4347. So I'm here to help, and I'm free. And I will include anybody you want and listen fairly. I will help you. Nobody needs to be worried about needing media specialists and spending more money when we could get free. I'm free. I will help you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Colby. Next up, Albert Callahan, Lindsay Blair, Gregory Ross.
We have a much bigger problem than a few books that might not meet community standards. Whoever chose those books also had their chance to get rid of books that they didn't like. And that was done quietly, without any input from the community, without any transparency. I checked a few books to see what might be missing, and it's alarming. I looked up our current Supreme Court Justice, Clarence Thomas. He's written a number of books. You would expect that to be in our high schools. Nothing. Not a single book by Clarence Thomas. Then I looked up his primary influence, Thomas Sowell. You would also expect that to be in our schools. He's been writing books since 1971, and his most recent is out in 2020. A long history of writing books, 51 of them, and a well-known author, writing primarily on economics, but nothing, zero, not a single one of Thomas Sowell's books anywhere in the schools. You might wonder, why these two? You could say, is it because they might be conservative Black intellectuals, or maybe because they share the name Thomas? I think we know the real reason here. So we have a problem of things being filtered, and if we get rid of a few of the most extreme offensive books, we haven't done anything to right the overall bias. We have a problem of an extreme bias to begin with, and we can get rid of the most extreme issues, and it's like, okay, we've gotten rid of that, but we haven't fixed the fundamental problem of the overall book selection being extremely biased. Somebody is getting a veto on books. They are getting to ban books without any input from the public. Nobody's seeing the ban. There's no hearings. It doesn't go up for a challenge. Somebody is banning books like those of Thomas Sowell and Clarence Thomas. These books are just disappearing. And so that is a book ban that is active right now and has been ongoing for many years and has tainted the whole collection, creating a gigantic bias on the entire collection. That is a book ban.
Thank you, sir. Lindsay Blair, Gregory Ross, Peyton Smith, please.
Good evening, everyone. When I signed up for this, I intended to talk about volunteering and hoping that we could find a way to expand the fingerprinting aspect. It is hard to get here during the workday. If there is a way we could find a way to partner with the Brevard County Sheriffs so that I can go to my local precinct, or some of these we can have events during school board meetings, maybe we can pay a little overtime to people who would like it and expand our fingerprinting time. So people that come here and want to be involved have the opportunity to get fingerprinted for the volunteer system. Now, as of course, the meeting progressed, I had other things I wanted to say. My daughter is in second grade. She has a speech delay that has impacted her ELA from the moment she started. She started kindergarten in the COVID year. So her first year was over the computer and facing that challenge. At the beginning of this school year, she was on the watch list for ELA. She's improved from a 39 percentile to 81 over this course of this year. And I credit that to her teacher, who's wonderful, and to her media specialist, who took the time to help her find cat books. Every single cat book in existence has come through my child's backpack. I didn't even know some of these cats existed. So for that, and these gains, which also great funding for this system, our media specialists are doing that. They're instilling that love to create this understanding. She now knows some Latin words because of this, because of studying this in second grade, when she can't pronounce them. She can't sound out words. One other thing, though. Before I had enough wrinkles that I could hold a dime here from frowning, years ago, I worked in defense contracting. I wanted to move up in my job. It wasn't a great economy, but I tried, I applied, and I was the best candidate. Promotion from within. I got stopped by our president at the time, saying, "We need you in that lower job. We can't afford to lose you. We need that job filled." In that moment, I held a professional face. I walked back to my desk. I took PTO and I immediately started applying for other jobs because I knew now I was no longer supported. It wasn't a great economy. I got fixed. Things got better. But my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Gregory Ross, Peyton Smith, Rachel Jolly. Mr. Ross.
Thank you, board. Good evening. I'm going to kind of ramble here for a little bit. Paul, I think you can appreciate that. Quite a few topics to talk about tonight. First thing I want to talk about is my name's Greg Ross. My address is 1857 Thomasville Avenue, Southeast, Palm Bay, Florida, 32909. So why do I put that in there? Mr. Trent, in a workshop a couple of weeks ago, one of the requests you had on the book reconsideration meeting was for challenges to be anonymous. Well, I think I appreciate the intent. I have a real problem with it, right? If you're going to get out in the public domain and you're going to make accusations or you're going to make challenges to books, that needs to be public, right? It's one of the great things about America is if you want to stand on the street corner, you can do that, and you can preach to the choir if you want. But what comes with that is the requirement that you have to listen to disagreement and condemnation of your opinion. Okay? If people want to get up here and they want to challenge books, they need to stand up and say who they are. Now, I appreciate that the board hasn't necessarily put anything into policy about anonymous, right? But let's just talk about it's the American way. You want to ban books, you want to challenge books, stand up and be counted. I want to thank you, Miss Wright, actually. I want to thank you because you at least sit here when somebody's talking to you and you look them in the eye. Thank you. That's respectful. I appreciate it. Okay. One of the other topics I want to talk about real quick was we've had a couple of members of the NAACP get up here tonight and talk about the learning gaps and the learning gains, right? And the issues they have. I haven't heard anybody up here talk about what's the cause of these issues, right? Hopefully you guys will work towards that, right? All I would ask is, what are you going to do when you find out the cause is systemic bias? Unintentional. But what are you going to do when that comes up, right? That's the question that they're asking you. What are you going to do when that is what happens? That's what you see as part of the problem or a driving force, right? If only there was some way we could teach about systemic bias in our country, right? That would be great, right? We could all get educated and learn how to deal with this issue. So please follow the science, follow the data, and do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Peyton Smith, Rachel Jolly, Rebecca McAleen.
There are a few things I would like to say about the new review committee for the books, but the main thing I need to focus on is that media specialists absolutely must have a vote on the new committee to review books. According to the Florida Department of Education, in order to become a certified media specialist, you must have, at minimum, a bachelor's degree. That includes at least 30 credit hours, the equivalent of a minor at university, in education media or library science. This includes courses in evaluating and selecting library media resources, books, and literature for children and adolescents. They take courses in child development and how to foster critical thinking and problem solving. Once they have the job, they're required to take multiple hours of personal development each year, including the most recent set of training from your bosses at the Florida Department of Education that requires media specialists to consider the broad racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and cultural diversity of the students in the state as they select instructional material. They are subject matter experts that we should listen to. Our media specialists dedicate years of their lives, and I don't even want to know how much money, to helping children find ways to connect with books, to love reading, to grow into productive members of society. They don't receive any kickbacks from publishers or special treatment for what books they have on the shelves. So, Mrs. Wright, when I read in an email that you wrote that you think that there's a conflict of interest by placing individuals employed by the district on your book review committee, I want to know what interests you think our media specialists have that conflict with yours. In that same email, you claimed that your goal is to protect children. How are our media specialists in conflict with that goal? What I have to infer when I read that you think that our librarians have a conflict of interest with your goal of protecting children is that you don't trust the people our district has hired. So why? Like all of our teachers, our media specialists want to see children succeed. They want our youth to grow up to be lifelong learners. Preparing a resilient, empathetic generation of students for life outside the classroom is protecting them. Many of our students are already experiencing or witnessing the hardships of life, like drug use or abuse, that are described in the books that are being challenged. Trying to hide those struggles without any consideration for the merit of the work or the lessons learned by and from the characters in those stories is a myopic, foolish waste of time that we have to raise and prepare our children for the rest of their lives. For the record, since some of the members of this board seem to misunderstand what a constituent is, this board represents everyone in this room and in the district, not just the people who voted for you. I have a student at Coquina Elementary and another at Jackson Middle School, which makes me your constituent, Mrs. Wright. And I say for the record that I don't want someone who reflects your understanding of protection on the book review committee. I want someone who has education and experience with children and literature. I want someone with expertise. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Ms. Jolly, Rebecca McMillan, and Michelle Beavers. There we go.
You did say Rochelle Jolly, yeah?
I did. Yes.
Okay, because it's just hard to hear you when everyone's clapping.
Well, and that is a good point. If we can, as a audience, the cheering is carrying out a little bit. So if we can cheer and then end it so that we can call up the appropriate people, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks. I would like to address the board concerning the proposed change of 25-21 instructional materials program. The removal of the voice or vote of the media specialists, content specialists, and school representatives from the book review committee will be a detriment to our children. We have amazing and wonderful teachers and media specialists serving our students. Their knowledge and experience are incredibly important and valuable. I currently have a 5th grader in Brevard Public School. He does not like to read, and if he heard me say that, he would say that was an understatement. He hates to read. At the beginning of each year, when we meet his teacher, I always inform them that he does not like to read. Every teacher has then immediately questioned me at what his interests are and what his favorite things are. because he or she would love to be able to find something that will spark the love of reading in my child. This is something I greatly appreciate. The same thing happens with media specialists. I've had many children go through the Brevard public school system, and more than once, they have come home and said that the media specialist, or what they call the librarian at their school, found them a book that they thought they might like. This is invaluable, especially when you have a child who struggles with reading or who does not like to read. Our current media specialist knows my son and his interests and makes sure that those books are available to him because she too hopes to spark a love of reading. I imagine that she does this for all of the children in our school, which is a lot. Media specialists and teachers know each one of the children. This provides them with a special knowledge of the diverse school population. This knowledge enables them to select books that will meet the many different interests of the students. Having a diverse media center that reflects the diverse student population is necessary for a well-rounded education. Their voices are invaluable in the book review process. I encourage you to include them on this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rebecca, you're up.
It's Macaline in all the letters. I initially was going to come and talk about what I watched today during the workshop, specifically, obviously, about books. And then listening to the people who are very well versed in our amazing media specialists, I think they've literally said everything they can possibly say to affect your opinions about why they should be included. One of the things that was interesting to me, and I know these comments are really literally an exercise in futility because I really feel like you've already made up your mind, but we cannot let these things go unchallenged in a democracy, so I'm going to say them anyway. Apparently, we are supposed to err on the side of caution to protect our children, but in the opinion of the board here, only the people that you choose are able to protect our children, not the people who you hired as competent media specialists to help choose these books. The books that are constantly being described with genitals, those are not in the curriculum. Those are not being taught. And actually that book that's continually brought up that with genitals in it, isn't it not even on the shelves anymore? So that probably should be taken off of the table. Are some parents' rights more valid than other parents? Is it my right to have a book in a library that speaks to my child's needs, whether they're have been abused, like we hear every meeting, or there are some sexual assaults or any of those things? Those voices are so important. And so to have your picked, chosen people decide because they have 6 kids. If I have 6 kids and I read books, does that, if I've driven 6 cars in my life, am I an auto mechanic now? That's not reasonable. There are people who are trained to do this, and that's what we need to do. A conflict of interest would be you guys voting for something for your children's school, because that's a conflict of interest. You wanted a track update for your district. That's a conflict of interest, but you're doing your job and you're doing it fairly, I assume. So to assume that someone that you hired or that this board has hired is not qualified because it's a conflict of interest for them to actually do their job is absolute insanity. It is insanity. I can't even understand it. I can't understand it. And so I would hope that at some point when you are clarifying the position as you did during the workshop, of what you think we're believing that you're doing about protecting the children, that you would actually address why you think it is a conflict of interest and why you feel so strongly about keeping my children and other people's children away from books that have nothing that your kid may not even look at, or some of these other people. It's not like that. You can't say go to the store and buy a book. That's called equity. And we learned about that tonight in academics and how we are not serving our children with equity and how these schools are not doing it. How do you think these kids are going to go to the store and buy this books? Please, do your job.
Thank you, Rebecca. Miss Michelle Beavers and Nicole Cannon up next.
Hello, board. I wanted to start with the glad moment that we talked about earlier when we had the Teacher of the Year. I'm so glad we all came together today in this room, everybody, to help our kids, and that everyone has the kids in the best interest of their heart when they come here. We don't say we're banning cigarettes when we make cigarettes available for 21 and up. And we don't say we're banning alcohol when that's available for 21 and up. We're not banning books. We're simply making them age appropriate. And the best place for some of these books is our public library. Some of them just simply aren't appropriate for our schools, and some aren't appropriate for junior high, and some aren't appropriate for elementary, depending on what we're talking about. Media specialists are overburdened, and I really appreciate that they're wonderful people, and they have a lot on their plate, and they can't possibly know what's in all these books. So when we challenge a book, it's not because the specialist necessarily even knows about that book. It's because we found the book and it's inappropriate, and they wouldn't have probably put that book on the shelf on purpose on some of these books, and in some cases, they still keep them after we have put in challenges. So I appreciate the parents that'll be on the committee helping decide what this book should stay or not, because we already know the librarian's opinion on that book is going to be keep it. I hope you can sit down with these librarians and hear what they have to say and try to help them, because they do have more than they can possibly do, and it is something that's been overlooked. And I would really appreciate it if you would get a room full of them together and brainstorm on how to fix the problem, because we don't want to overburden that resource that we have. These people are the ones who help every child that comes to their door every day, and they shouldn't have to choose between doing their paperwork and attending to a child. It just shouldn't have to be that kind of a choice. I also want to dispel a rumor that we have unproportionately targeted the LGBTQ community in these books. There are 41 titles that I'm aware of that have been challenged. About 4 of those have LGBTQ themes. So it is not an LGBTQ issue, it's an inappropriate issue for what's appropriate for children. If they're having intercourse in a book and it's very descriptive and very detailed, it doesn't really belong in our schools. There's such great literature that I'm sure these librarians all know about that they can get in our schools, and that's what we should be gearing our kids towards. What else? That was pretty much all of my points. But I do hope that you assist these librarians, because they are drowning right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beavers. Next up is Ms. Cannon, Richard Weber, Crystal Casey. We are now on the Nicole Cannon. Ms. Cannon is 21 out of 30.
Sorry, let me just find where sorry.
It's okay. Would you like Mr. Weber to go? And
Could he
maybe
go
you
first? I'm sorry, I
Absolutely.
can't.
No. We've been doing that at the beginning anyway. Mr. Weber.
Hello, Rick Beaver. 2 or 3 weeks ago, so I stood here and read the first part of an article from the New Yorker. It was about a substitute teacher, part-time, that was informed by his children that a book they were using in his class was no longer allowed to be used. The substitute teacher took pictures of empty bookshelves. He was fired after the article with the pictures of the empty bookshelves was published, and the governor called them misleading. The teacher worked for a contractor that provided substitute teachers for Jacksonville, Florida. They're the ones that fired him. Very recently, a Florida principal resigned over the introduction of images of the Renaissance statue of David to a 6th grade class. This was in a private school. The Bible has been challenged in Utah. To Kill a Mockingbird is challenged or banned in another state. Teachers are covering bookshelves because of poorly defined legislation. A book used by a teacher that makes a student uncomfortable now makes a teacher uncomfortable about the consideration of liability. Hence, bookshelves are empty or covered. Today, Megan Wright said only 2 books have been banned thus far in Brevard County. She seems to be missing the point, that this book banning is making teaching more difficult, and the consequence of this legislation to ban books is a nightmare. One Moms for Liberty person challenged 30 books but has withdrawn them. Stop this from happening, please. This is crazy. We need media specialists overlooking this stuff. It is wasteful and unreasonable. The same person's Facebook page shared that he or she was attracted to Trump and DeSantis in a more salacious terms. I would be willing to bet than any of the 30 challenge books that this person wanted reviewed. About the teacher that resigned in a private school, students in a Florida school were shown images of Michelangelo's Renaissance period sculpture David, leading to complaints that the children were shown pornographic material. Tallahassee Classical School, a private institution, gave its principal an ultimatum to quit or be fired after 3 parents complained. That was the school board chair that I think gave her the ultimatum to quit or be fired. No ideas, please, Mr. Sisson.
Thank you,
Have a good
Mr.
day.
Weber.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Ms. Nicole Cannon, if you would come back up. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that opportunity
No.
to collect myself.
Fine.
I just want to say that I stand with all of these amazing media specialists that we have here, and I really hope that you guys can find the allocations for them to bring back their assistance. They need it more than anything. With that said, I'm deeply saddened by the recent implosion of my children's elementary school. Not only are we losing their wonderful administration at the end of this year, but we're also losing 11 teachers and counting that are not going to be returning to our 2023-2024 school year. With so many open positions in our district, more than 300, I believe, I'm extremely worried about what's going to happen at my children's elementary school next year. I would like to take a moment of silence in honor of the decades of service, the students they leave behind, and the staff and teachers who deserve better than what the state of Florida and Brevard Public Schools are giving them. I appreciate the eye contact. Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Crystal Casey, Paul Raub, Samantha Curvin, please. Okay, Ms. Casey, if you can begin your speech. If you're not prepared, then I can have Mr. Raub come up and complete it for you. And you can come up after him.
Good evening, distinguished board and Superintendent Dr. Schiller. I come before you as a mother to share information about a domestic terrorist threat that occurred today at Vieira High School. Today, during fourth period ceramics, a student named 4 students that she wished to bring a gun to school and kill those 4 students. One of those students named was my child. It was overheard by witnesses and therefore reported to administration the domestic terrorist threat to kill students at Vieira High School with a weapon. And so I'm standing before you asking and begging for your help to protect the students of Vieira High School. And I'm pleading with you to do that because, as we all know, yesterday, Audrey Hale murdered 6 people at a school in Nashville, 3 of which were children, innocent children, and 3 adults. So I've come before you with concerns, different concerns that have yet to be resolved, but this is different. I cannot impress upon you the value of each child's life. And what I am asking for you to do is to ensure the safety of the students at Vieira High School. The principal of Vieira High School said that she would have a meeting with me to instill a safety plan for my child, but he is terrified to attend school at Vieira High School after knowing that this is actually a credible domestic terrorist threat of violence in Brevard public schools. So this would be the very first time I come before you to beg you to protect these kids at Vieira High School. I'm begging you, do everything that you can, because even though the Vieira High School principal says that the threat is not credible, we don't know that to be true or not. So please find it within yourself to protect these students.
Thank you, Ms. Casey. Mr. Paul Raub, Samantha Curvin, Kelly Curvin.
I'm tired. I mean, it's been I've been here not as long as you guys, and just the 1 day a week. Honestly, your schedule is exhausting, all of you. I couldn't do it, but I'm tired. I was going to be sarcastic. I was going to be jokey, as I sometimes can be. I was going to joke about the circus that was happening out front, the sort of parody of an anti-educational rally. But I'm tired of making so many of these same comments, complaints, suggestions. I'm tired of hearing the same. It's been the bad faith Olympics here this evening. Talking about protecting the children. Protecting my children who you've never met, folks. I want to protect my children from oppression, from censorship, from fascism. I want to protect them from people who've never met them or me, but want to override our rights as parents of our own children, our parental rights. I don't want to take away someone else's kid's right to read a book, which can be banned from the schools even if it exists elsewhere in the universe. Words mean things. I'm tired of hearing about challenges about books, and we'll throw a lot of words in one sentence. Nudity, pornography, children, elementary school, kindergartners, as though those things were in any time in contact with each other in the school district, as though the boards, as though the books that were challenged weren't high school level books on high school shelves with no pictures of any kind. I'm tired of hearing that only two books were removed. Well, yeah, when you suspend the book review process after 2 meetings, things are going to slow down a bit. And then when those challenges are removed, waiting for the new, wood chipper book policy, yeah, it will slow things down. I'm tired of talking about it, but I'm going to keep coming. I volunteered for that committee hoping that I might make a difference because like many people, I was surprised again to find out that in this or the latter half of the previous century, book banning was a thing. The new proposals kind of gut that hope of actually making a difference, but I'll still show up. I'll still speak. I'll still try to be heard. I will still read the whole book, even if the persons challenging them don't, if we ever have another meeting. And I sincerely hope that some media specialists, again, the people who know what they are talking about, if those people are involved, that would be great. That would really be fantastic. Because again, to paraphrase what was said earlier, I'm not a media specialist. I'm a concerned parent. I've read a lot of books, not a media specialist. Flown on planes, not a pilot. Eaten a lot of food, not a chef. We have people who really know what they're doing. Please give them a seat at a very important table. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raub. Samantha Curvin, Kelly Curvin, Katie Delaney.
Okay, hello. My name's Samantha. I think you all know me. I've been here sometimes. I really have not count. Well, there's been all this talk about book banning. I would be correct by saying that. And, well, I would like to talk about something according with that. And there's something before book banning that's very important. Learning how to read. So when I started 3rd grade, believe it or not, I wasn't able to read. I could not physically pick up a book, look at the letters, or comprehend anything that's on the page. It's not because I'm stupid. It's not because I didn't try. I tried a lot. I physically couldn't. I have something called dyslexia. And even though my mother, bless her heart, she started the IEP process my 2nd grade year, I only had any of the benefits by time my halfway between my 3rd grade year. I know they take a while, but that's not very great to me. So it was taking a very long time. So my mother found a tutor for dyslexia, which is a lot easier said than done. There is very, very little of them out there to begin with, so it's very difficult to find them, along with it could be more expensive. She would check me out every week so I can go to a tutor. Her name was Bonnie. She does not live in America anymore. She was so amazing, though. She was able to figure out my way of learning because the way you tackle dyslexia is via the child's way of learning. Me, I have more of a instead 2D mind, more like 3D. I see things in 3D shapes. I am visual, severely visual. And being, well, that much tutor, instead of focusing on removing books from students, books that contain information that me and my peers need to know so we learn hard lessons without having to go through it ourselves. That'd be more preferred. Focus on teaching every student how to read. And I would like to bring this up because, fun fact, if you didn't know, about 20% of your students before even walking in the door are bound to fail because they don't know how to read. And because of the way you teach how to read, it's not technically for everyone, along with it's not effective for everyone, especially kids with dyslexia. You have no program, and it was way too difficult. Thank you for your time. Bye.
Thank you very much. Miss Kelly Curvin, Katie Delaney, Mike Mueller. Did you get them? Mueller or Mueller?
I'd first like to address a comment that was made earlier today about books being written at lower levels. The United States ranks 125th in literacy. 21% of the American population is functionally illiterate, and 54% of Americans read below a sixth grade level. Our gap in literacy is systemic, and Brevard Public Schools continue to compound that problem by ignoring the 20% of students that have dyslexia and other language-based reading disabilities. And now that that is out of the way, Ms. Wright, you also didn't come to us with educational leadership experience, and yet we're stuck with you. And you're also a liar and a hypocrite. In your email response to parents this week, I'd like to point out a few things. You claim your position on book removals isn't political. That's a lie. You specifically stated that you represent those who elected you, and the people you assigned to the review committee will have those same values. That is a political statement. It also suggests that the voices of people who didn't vote for you don't matter. You represent all students. That is the job you signed up for. You also did not run on the platform of firing Dr. Mullins, and had you wouldn't be sitting there. You claim that books aren't going to be banned because they're available elsewhere. That's also a lie. When you remove access to a book from a public school library, you've banned it from that space. You don't get to change the meaning of a word just because it makes you uncomfortable to be considered a book ban supporter. It's also a lie that only 2 books have been affected. Our own BPS website has a detailed list of books that were removed but didn't necessarily go before the book review committee. The head of the book removal committee for Moms for Liberty has already outlined the future on her public Facebook page. She pulled her other requests after the book review committee did not vote in favor of removing the first 2 books that went before the committee. She pulled those knowing that the policy was changing. The new policy, which ensures books will be removed en masse, you support. The list of books that are going to be challenged is a mile high, and you're not prepared. Katie was smart earlier to say that the policy could be abused. It will be abused. When we take information out of our children's hands, even when the information isn't comfortable, we open them up to be victims of abuse themselves. When they don't know how to ask for help, when they don't know that something is wrong, when they don't know the names of things or how to express themselves, they become vulnerable. So do not tell me or any other parent that this policy is about keeping children safe. What this board fails to do over and over again across the spectrum of policies, from cell-phones to discipline and book bans to dress code, is not take into account that all students don't come from the same background. Every student doesn't have a parent or guardian who is protecting them, and it is the job of our schools to be their safety net. By manipulating a policy to allow mass removal of books that teach and inform our students about how the world actually is, you are cutting the strings of that net, and it is the most vulnerable students who will fall through and experience trauma that will last their entire lives. Dr. Schiller, you may not have been my top pick for the interim superintendent position, but I have thoroughly enjoyed and appreciated watching you work so hard to right the BPS ship. Thank you for all the time you've spent here, and I am thoroughly going to miss you once you're gone. Thank you.
Katie Delaney, Mike Mueller, Carrie Takis, and Ruth Koffel-Hold will be the last speakers. Ms. Delaney.
Thank you. I am here to talk about money. The way that procurements and capital improvements are brought forward to the board, I feel like is a huge problem. You all simply see the final phase of it, and it's practically a rubber stamp based on what the staff says. And you all are the board, and one of your top responsibilities is funding, deciding where the funding goes in our district. I challenge this board to not just rely on staff for the budget, but deep dive into it on your own so that you know exactly where every dime is going. And the way that we deal with money needs an overhaul. It's not working. It hasn't been working. And so many things are so underfunded, yet we have a $1.5 billion budget. We need to spend the money where it's most needed. The teachers and the 1010, they need raises. Frankly, anybody in our schools practically need raises. The money needs to be going towards making sure that the children are achieving their academic goals and maintaining our crumbling schools. Dare I say, more funding for music, athletics, and extracurriculars. We really need to overhaul the way that we're doing things as far as the money goes. In light of recent events and I mean, we've been talking about this for how many years now? The discipline and the safety in our schools it's out of control. It's out of control. I don't care what you are, left, right, center, it doesn't matter. All of us want a safe place for our kids to go to school. And frankly, I feel like leadership is undermining, seriously undermining our board. And our kids deserve to have a safe place to go to school, regardless of their skin color, regardless of their mental, difficulties. We need to put the priorities, we need to prioritize our kids and the safety of our kids and the well-being of our kids. And this, I'm just speechless.
Thank you, Ms. Delaney. Mike Mueller, Carrie Takis, Ruth Crawford. Yeah.
Good evening, board. My name is Mike Mueller, and I'm a gay dad of 2 children who are currently enrolled in BPS. As you can see from my t-shirt, I am with Gays Against Groomers, a nonpartisan coalition of gay, lesbian, and transgender people who are fighting against the sexualization and medicalization of children. I am here this evening to let you know that we are completely and totally opposed to sexually explicit content in our public school libraries. In a world where we have access to anything and everything on the internet, I do not understand why certain people are hell-bent on keeping pornographic material in our school libraries. To those individuals, and you know who you are, either you're trying hard to virtue signal to show everybody how wonderfully inclusive and progressive you are, or perhaps your motives are much more nefarious. In the latter case, we seriously have to wonder, what exactly is on your computer's hard drive? Stop using the LGBTQ+ community as a shield to promote your twisted agenda. But if you're virtue signaling, and I'd like to include certain members of the board here, please stop. You're literally hurting the gay community, and your efforts are backfiring. After finally achieving full equality, support for us and families like mine is now slipping. Stop using the gay community as a prop. It is not anti-gay to remove sexually explicit books from school libraries. It's just common sense. On behalf of Gays Against Groomers and myself, I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller. Carrie Takis, Ruth Crawford.
Carrie Takis. Firearms are prohibited from Brevard schools. Vapes are prohibited from Brevard schools. So there's no reason that pornography shouldn't be prohibited from Brevard schools. Adults can go and get it outside of our schools. Doesn't belong here. I have not heard one person come to this school board and say they have a problem with banning guns or banning vapes. So I'm just mind blown why we wouldn't apply that to pornography as well. The book policy parents are asking for is straightforward. We want inappropriate, explicit pornography removed from school grounds. Doesn't matter if it's gay, straight, bi, whatever. It's pornography, and that's the problem. The issue we should be focusing on, which was touched on by multiple people before me, is that our kids can't read in this county. That's a huge problem. Only 58% of third graders are proficient in ELA. 60% of fourth graders, 61% of fifth graders, 64% of seventh graders, 52% of eighth graders, 55% of ninth graders, and 54% of 10th graders are proficient. They're struggling. And they've taken a backseat to a culture war where adults rally with the heads of their local officials taped to sticks. Where they have fake fire, they insult our sheriff, and they wear costumes while accusing other people of being Nazis. We're supposed to be here to prepare our children for adulthood. They will be hopelessly disadvantaged if they cannot read on grade level when they leave Brevard Public Schools. All we want is this inappropriate content removed. You're free to buy it or check it out at the public library if you want it that bad. But it's not appropriate, especially for our youngest kids. Thank you.
Miss Ruth Kaufhold. Miss Ruth Kaufhold is no longer here. So that concludes our public speaking. I think I need a 5-minute break just to use the restroom real quick and come back.
Yeah.
Just take an adjournment. Back. We are now on the consent agenda. This portion is supposed to be by Dr. Schiller. He's going to say there's 22 agenda items under this category. I'll say thank you, Dr. Schiller. Does any of the board members wish to remove any of the items on the consent agenda?
I would like to pull F20 for discussion.
Okay. Anybody else have any other ones they want to pull? Okay. Items F20 will be pulled for discussion. I will entertain a motion to accept the consent items with the exception of those pulled for discussion, if applicable. Move to approve.
Second.
Is there any discussion? I'll signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Back on to item F20.
Okay, this is in regards to a lease agreement that we. Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. She's right. All right. Is there a move to approve? Second? Okay, got it. All right, here we go.
I apologize.
Sorry, guys, I'm just gonna roll. I'm
Sorry.
just trying to go.
I apologize.
Now it's discussion. Sorry.
Wanted to pull this item just because there were some things in this contract extension that were maybe not the most advantageous to our district. One of them is that we are changing the lease from a 5-year lease to a 50-year lease. That's what's in this agreement. The other is in regards to the ability to terminate the lease, and that should be permissible by both parties, not just the leasee. Those are the two main changes that I'm seeing in this, and to me, I feel like this is something that probably should be brought back before the board on a regular basis more than every 50 years.
Thank you. Are there any other conversations to this item?
Yes, Ms. Wright, have you had a conversation with Ms. Han about the contract?
I have not. Is
Okay.
Miss Han here or not?
Well, it's
kinda-
if Dr. Schiller would want her to come and.
Miss Ann, I apologize. Yes, come on up. I didn't see you there. You were there. Go ahead.
Ms. Han, do you have, can you, just for the public also to understand what this property is, when's the last time we used it, what they're using it for, just, maybe would be helpful. And
Sure.
why such a long lease?
Sure, yes. This is Kyler School up in the MIMS area.
Mhm.
And we had been approached by Thule Community Development Company, they're a nonprofit, to utilize the school for basically STEM classes, adult education, also for students and providing services to the community. And they had initially proposed a 5-year lease. Part of that lease agreement is the Thule Group will be doing any and all capital improvements to the building. So the other components of the lease agreement indicate that the district has no responsibility for doing anything to the building at all. So as they've gone through the design process with their architect, they have found that there's some fairly significant capital investments they need to make for the building. And in doing so, they've approached some potential funding partners, and their funding partners have told them that typically they prefer a longer lease term. So this change was made at their request, and we kind of kicked it around and felt that we have not used the building. It really is not suitable for any purposes that the district might use it for. It is, it's not a technical out parcel at this point in time, but it is part of a larger parcel that is primarily used by Brevard County Parks and Recreation. There's a community center on that site. So it's not something that I think we would use in the foreseeable future. Mrs. Wright, we had similar concerns about, this is a very, very long-term
Right.
agreement. But I didn't see that it had a use for the district in the foreseeable future. The one clause that we modified basically said that if they don't do any work within the next 5 years, that we would have an opportunity to terminate. So the way that I tried to structure it is if they come in and they invest and they make great capital improvements to the building and use it for its intended purpose that was stated in their original lease agreement, that the longer term would apply. If they don't do that, we would have that option within the first 5 years if they didn't live up to their part of the agreement to terminate. So I tried to get through the middle of the road in that situation where we would facilitate the Thule Group getting financing, but also if they didn't comply with their end of the bargain, that we would be able to terminate in the shorter term.
Thank you, Ms. Han, for answering those questions. So if I'm understanding you correctly, we have a piece of property that we haven't used for some time that we have no intention to use in the near future because it's being used a significant amount of that property for other things we have agreements with that we are not putting any money into, that they're securing all their own funding to do something in the community. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Trent, you have anything to say on this? Ms. Jenkins? Quick question, Ms. Han, is there do you have a list of those improvements somewhere that we can hold them accountable for? You know what I mean? Like if we're going to do it in 5 years, like this is what you have to accomplish kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Because I would be afraid like they They redid one part and said, yep, we're good. We got, you know what I mean? Because I love these people. Like, I love this program. I think this is one of the best programs out there. I want to see it go, but I want to see how maybe we can help them too. I don't know.
So the attachment to the lease agreement includes their plan, and their plan outlines the classes that they're going to have at the facility. So really the performance is around the classes. In order for them to have the classes, they must do some improvements to the building. If you've been in that building, the front is not in bad shape, but there's some fairly significant improvements on the back side of the building that they need to make. There's some roof leaks. They've been working with our building official, and the scope of what they need to do is a little bit more than what they had originally thought was going to be necessary in order to operate anything in the building. So as I said, the performance is really more around offering the classes, but they can't offer the classes until they make enough improvements so that they can occupy the building.
And I have ask
No,
another
keep just-
question. Is
we're here.
the financing that they're going to get for these repairs contingent upon this lease? They cannot get the financing unless the lease is extended. Is that correct?
One of their financing partners, that is correct. I don't know that that's true for any and all financing, but that was what their funding partner suggested, that their typical relationship with other nonprofits is a long-term lease.
And then the financing partner, I'm just going to ask this for the record, is not going to be able to lien the property or anything of that nature, correct?
No, that's not permissible under the lease agreement.
Is there anything inside of here that in the event that they use it outside the scope of what they originally went to, that we, you know what I mean? Like that 50 years is, I mean,
Yes, that's
a lot of time.
That is one of the material default clauses in the original lease agreement. So they need to use it for its intended purpose that's described in the lease agreement. And Paul, you feel free to chime in if I'm going astray here, but I believe that's correct.
Okay. What's your direction, Ms. Wright?
I mean, I love what they're doing. I love the vision for it. I was able to go and tour that facility with you, Ms. Hannon, so I appreciate it. I think as far as from a district standpoint, a 50-year lease is an extremely long lease. I don't know that the life of the building has 50 years left on it. So is this something that's negotiable that we can go back and say, hey, we're not comfortable with 50 years, but maybe we could extend it longer? Would your financing partners be willing to meet there in the middle? I just feel like 50 years is an extremely long time. And as the changes of the community and growth in the area, things might change too. So that's something to consider.
Okay. Is there a length of term that the board would be comfortable with that I can discuss with the Thule group?
Ms. Wright, would you like to meet?
I
with
mean,
Ms.
I think a 10-year lease is adequate. And then to just at least to be able to lay eyes on the lease and reevaluate it and re-sign it every 10 years, I think is a fair request, because we're giving him that facility for $1 a year, right? I believe, or something of that nature. So it's free for them to use as long as they do the renovations to it. So I think just to make sure that it's the best interest for the district to lay eyes on the lease every 10 years is a fair request. I don't know. What does the board feel?
Maybe 10-year extensions, but just a review to make sure that it's up to like a couple of stipulations, like say, hey, maybe we do a 50-year or something like that, but it's a review every 10 years that they have accomplished their goals, that it's in good working order. You know what I mean? That stuff, so that might be the angle. I'm just making suggestions. It's so tough because I don't know, you guys weren't around, but Melbourne High School, the old Melbourne High School, they tore it down, right? And I was trying so hard to create a group to come in and do exactly what these people are doing. And I love what they're doing. Like, I think that it's phenomenal. I think that what their vision is amazing. I just, that, like you said, the 50 years is a little, it stretches it for me. But I don't know, maybe if we can meet with you and then bring it back on the 11th with some sort of modifications that they may agree to real quick. I would say that there might be just, 10-year intervals of checking towards meeting the standards of, keeping the place up to par and all these other things. I don't know, somewhere in there, if that helps. Ms. Campbell.
I don't know how the financing works. 10 seems like it might not be long enough, especially since, because if it's going to take significant, I'm thinking we're talking about in the millions potentially, or
What is the
Probably
scope?
in the several hundred thousand,
right?
500 to $1 million type of.
And if
range.
they supply that funding for this organization to do it, but then the lease is over and then we take it back and then we get the benefit of the money, which we weren't going to use it for anything. So I I hesitate, I mean, for us to, we can give you, hey, this is what can we work it down towards 10? But, you know, they need to see how they can get it done. I mean, you know, I'm fine with us moving, you know, yeah, what motion do we need, Paul, to table this definitely or whatever?
There's already a pending motion, so
Okay. So what do we need to do?
yeah, you can vote it down and then move to table or move to the, I would say, April 11th agenda.
Can we withdraw the motion?
Yeah, you can, yeah, you made the
Okay.
motion.
I'd like to we don't
Can I just
discuss
speak to
more.
something real quick? Yeah, 'cause I- I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
where you're going is right. I just wanted to-
Yes.
Can I go first? I think it's important for us to recognize where we're not experts. And so I have a question for you, Ms. Hand. It seems like these conversations would have happened in this process. Am I wrong to make that assumption?
So yes, in the sense that when Mrs. Curry brought this to me, we did talk about some of the concerns about a long-term lease. It's obviously a big commitment on the part of the district. It's an asset of the district that we would not have access to. So yes, in that sense, we did talk through the pros and cons, and the fact that they are trying to bring in funding partners. I think she felt that it was important to bring this proposed amendment to the board. So that's why it's on your agenda. But I believe that Mrs. Curry would certainly be receptive to further discussions about the terms so that everyone can be comfortable.
And I'm not asking that question to say that 50 years isn't a long time. Obviously it is. But I think it's important for us to not quickly just throw out random numbers arbitrarily when we have no expertise in this area, when this goes through an entire process before it even comes to us in the first place. Not that it can't go back, but to throw out suggestions out there, I don't see the point in that. So if the recommendation is to ask them to bring this back to the table and figure out a different solution, let them propose that solution to people who already had this conversation. That's their job.
Thank you for the process. I want to say one thing. So many of our group organizations that try to do these have these amazing intents, and then they have this big thing that they have to go raise money for and everything else, and it just it ends up not getting there, right? And what I would say is, I've always tried to do this, and I don't know if this is appropriate, but we have some massive contractors that are doing a whole lot of business for us. And years ago, when I was at Space Coast, we had one of those total home redos or whatever, came into Cocoa. I worked for 3 days up there framing and stuff like that. And we did, if it's 300,000, we might be able to engage with and just say, hey guys, is anybody willing to do one of these? I mean, you can do, because this is a community piece. This is community members that want to do this. It might be a better idea, so that they don't have to go out and get money to a loan that they have to go pay for, that we try to initiate ourselves to help. That's all. Like, I know you start getting kind of heart palpitations when I start talking about that, but I think that I just know what they're trying to do, and I want them to succeed. And I don't want it to be because of some stupid lease, and I don't want them to take over too much money that they can't get to on a fundraising, or they take out too much money and they fold. Like, I want this to happen. So I don't know how to make that happen like this. You know what I mean? So anyways, if we can go back to them, but I want to try to do something innovative here.
So can we
It's
make
your
a
area.
motion?
Yeah,
Can
so
we make a motion? Because
we can't, I have to rescind my motion. Because the other option is voting this down, and I don't think that we wanted the look of that right now. So before I rescind my motion, I was going to say, you know, since over the last year in my role on the board of the Children's Hunger Project, you know, we bought a new building and had it renovated. The contractor who did the construction did do a lot of work, but we still had to pay for it. So nonprofits, you know, may get a pretty sweet deal, especially if they're, you know, beloved by their community, whatever. But the idea that somebody would come in and do all that work for free, significant work, I think probably a little unrealistic. But I'm sure they're probably having those conversations. So with that, I would like to rescind my motion and put forward a new motion that we table this decision until Ms. Hand can take that back to the Kyler Group and see if they can come with a reduced length of the term.
I'll second the motion. Do we need to vote on that or no? I mean,
Yes.
okay.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Dr. Schiller, will you please let us know about the item under the action portion of today's agenda?
Yes. Tonight's item is H34, procurement solicitations.
Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there any discussion?
I would like to discuss one portion of it, and I'm just for the public's perception and to understand, because when I first saw this contract, I had heart palpitations on the amount of money, and I thought, oh my goodness, what is it? And I worked with Dr. Green. She was very gracious in supplying all the things I asked for. So what was extremely beneficial to me, and I don't know if my fellow board members had a chance to review this or not, but they gave us all of the ratings from the people that were on the procurement bid there, and it was helpful to see what their ratings were. So I just want to say, after reading them and trusting the expertise of who was on that committee, I felt significantly more confident in saying, hey, this is the best contract for us to approve. The $1 million one is the one that I was kind of eek about. So just wanted to clear that up.
Okay. Any other discussion? No? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All any opposed, say nay. Okay, we're now move on to the information agenda, which includes items for board review and may not be brought back for these action at subsequent meetings. No action will be taken at these items today. There are 4 items under this category. Do any members wish to discuss any of these items?
Sorry, you gotta give me a second. I'm trying to pull it up.
Student services, district operations, elementary office and meeting and
Thank
learning. We good?
Yeah, no, I don't
Everybody
think I have
good?
anything in that department.
Okay. All good? Good? Okay. All right, we're now at board member reports. The topic is interim superintendent contract amendment request. I just wanted to, kind of give an overview of what it was, and I think it got kind of crazy and misconfused and misunderstood and everything else. So what ended up happening is that Paul and I, and I'm going to ask Paul in a second to just go ahead and explain the back and forth that we've gone to, due to a couple of things, have had a couple of opportunities to discuss with Mr. Schiller or Dr. Schiller, his amend his contract to include some of the issues that we were dealing with, and we were going back and forth, and there was some you know what I mean, requests for certain things that I felt like I didn't have the board authority to do, and then we came to a place where I told Mr. Schiller, I said, Mr. Schiller, I would appreciate bringing that back to the board, and he had indicated that he didn't want to bring it back to the board. And then what had happened is that most recently there was another request that came out, and I was like, I said, I just maybe need to get some board direction because we've been going back and forth with it for a little bit, and that's why it's here. So Mr. Gibbs, can you give kind of an overview as to what's been going on?
Yeah, if you remember at the January offsite, there were issues raised with the original contract that was entered into with Dr. Schiller and the board. And the board was amenable to amending that agreement to alleviate the concerns that were raised at that meeting. So Mr. Susan and myself began, negotiating with Dr. Schiller. Dr. Schiller provided his suggestions for amending the contract. Mr. Susan and I sat down and went through those suggestions. We came up with the revised proposed contract that was sent to Dr. Schiller. Dr. Schiller responded with a list of his responses to that revised agreement that we sent to him, and that resulted in the final round that came out. I don't remember when that came down, but it's been recent. So there was back and forth. Mr. Susan and I discussed. We met several times with Dr. Schiller and discussed, and that's how we got to where we are. And my understanding is Mr. Susan wants direction from the board on what he has direction to move forward with.
So what we have is just so you know, to get into depth about it, Dr. Schiller had requested for a couple of reasons to to add extra sick days at the end of his contract so that he can cash it out.
Excuse me, sir,
Hang on, Mr. Schiller, just let me
speak?
finish.
Before you get into details,
Mr.
I think
Schiller,
it's important, sir.
Mr. Schiller, I'm just going through and explaining this. This is just part of
Yes,
the board.
but I do think I
Mr.
need
Schiller,
to speak. Please, sir.
I can give you the opportunity. I haven't even finished introducing the topic.
You're getting into
So-
the details, sir.
And that is what the point of
May I speak
introducing
to
the
the
topic.
topic,
No,
sir?
Mr. Schiller, no. I'm going to explain the process and then I'll give you an opportunity if you'd like to speak. So the issue is that, so there were just some outside the box thought processes, right? And if you read some of it, which isn't bad, I just wanted to say that I could go back. So one of them was that to have extra sick days at the end of his contract so that he could cash them out. The other one was a series, and I asked him, I said, look, I can bring that to the board if you'll make a series of requests for these reports. And with Dr. Schiller's background and knowledge, I thought maybe, you know what I mean? One of you guys would think that, you guys may think that this is something that we may want to do. But the idea would be that there was a couple other issues, but like these reports would be a series of dollars, 3,000, 2,000, depending on those things. And I just didn't feel like I had that power in order to say yes. So I asked to bring it to the board. And then, so then in the last, I think it was in February, was it, Paul, where we had the sick days and the extra requests was there, right? For the reports.
The last time we met, there were proposals for, adding sick days. But
Right.
I don't remember.
And Dr. Schiller
exactly when it
said,
was.
no, he said, I don't want that to go to the board because I maybe, and then he sent the most recent one, which is Mr. Susan and Mr. Gibbs, where he talks about, and this is where we've been going back and forth, is there seems to be some confusion over the $300,000 total salary advertisement. And then he says in here, he would request 3 times the amount of total monthly contribution for medical gold plan, dental HMO PPO plan. It just got to the point where I thought there was, so we have a series of requests that we've just keep kind of changing. And I just didn't know, the original argument was we offer him exactly what Dr. Mullins was getting. And then inside of that, if there were any kind of confusion, which there was in the beginning because we had not put all of the, like the healthcare and all that stuff together. So we amended that appropriately. And then Dr. Schiller had added some of the other things. So we've gone back and forth a couple times, but I didn't think it was appropriate at the time for me to actually start to have that conversation or approve any of it. And that's why I just brought it before the board with no disrespect to anybody, just what it is. So with that, does anybody have anything to say? And then I was going to ask Dr. Schiller to explain.
I would just say this is, all these are at least a little bit old. So, I mean, I want to give Dr. Schiller would have probably it's good for him to have a chance. It's his contract, so it'd probably be good for him to have a chance to.
One of the issues that we're dealing with is we're not in a negotiations with Dr. Schiller right now. Like that's not what we're doing. We're trying to get clarification as to, I just wanted to know if there's requests in here that he says that I don't think were inside of the original agreement. And that's why I was going to bring them to you. So I can clarify a little bit deeper, but Dr. Schiller, it's just an informational thing. You have the floor.
Mr. Susan, I have strongly advised you yesterday when I was told that you wanted to talk about this, not to proceed with this topic. I have not made this request that was attached to it. I have, to be honest with you, last night when I saw it for the first time at 7:22.
Mr. Schiller, this is your document. You
No,
sent
sir,
it.
it is not my document, it is your document. I have sent to the full board my reasons, among which were many, as to why not you should proceed with this. And I asked you, implored you not to. After all, I don't want to get into the details of back and forth, but I would tell you that I'm appalled that my basic right of having legal representation present has been violated again by
Dr.
not allowing me adequate time to even have someone represent me tonight. I have not even seen this complete document until I was informed of it at the last minute and not opening it or being able to open it until 7:20 last night. And I was receiving inquiries from the media, of which I would not respond. To go forward at this time with this matter is unprofessional, and it violates your own adopted board guidelines of operations and policies, not to mention professional courtesy and basic human decency and regarding BPS personnel, namely me. Is this matter and the interim of the superintendent and the way it's being handled tonight after, let me see, you having an executive session beginning on or about 10 a.m., a work session between 1 to 4:30 p.m., a reception for honored guests between 4:45 and 5:25 p.m., and after approximately 4 hours and 40 minutes of a board meeting. Is this the appropriate time, which I would humbly suggest it is not? I started my day, as I have been since
Dr.
December
Schiller,
7th. Please, sir, I am
But
trying. I'm making my point. I have started my day at 3 a.m. as I have since I began and devoted solely between 18 and a half to 19 hours a day as documented hourly since the day that you called me and said that I was selected by the board to serve as interim. To that time, on weekends, I have fully documented hourly a minimum of 11 hours per Saturday and Sunday. I'm tired, especially tonight, since I arrived for work in Brevard County at 6:10 a.m. To go forward to talk this through of a document that was put on at the last moment unilaterally without my knowledge, much less the document has not been the one that I agreed to have go forward. It was something dated February 10th, if I would point on, and then you cherry pick putting additional matters on. This is a horrendous type of demonstration of HR personnel matters that potential candidates have been witnessing. Now, all I can say is that please, I just respectfully and forcefully request that this matter not be proceeded with on this topic and or discussion tonight at 10:10 p.m. Please, sir.
Thank you, Dr.
Board
Schiller.
members, thank you.
Just for point of clarification, Mr. Gibbs, the reference document and point was Dr. Schiller's last send over to us as part of the conversation, correct? This is the to Mr. Susan and Mr. Gibbs.
I believe that is.
That is his last
believe-
document that was sent to
I
us, right?
believe that is the last document that I received.
So hang on,
in
just let me
addressing the
finish.
contract. Yes.
So this is, and this is why, Dr. Schiller, I don't think, I respectfully don't think that you understand what I was trying to get at here. Like this is the last document you sent over. What happened is Dr. Schiller also made a request for a bunch of information related to dates that Paul and I had gotten together and all these other things. Paul, did we put that inside the book, the attachments today that everybody should review?
I don't believe Tammy included that.
Can you explain the document that we received from Dr. Schiller last week?
It wasn't us. It was myself, Dr. Green, and Miss Aguirre were asked for information, and we compiled the information to the best of our ability.
What were some of those identified areas of conversation that he was requesting?
Dates that we met to discuss the contract, dates that the board considered the contract and his proposals from that he had made, and the terms that he had made. And there were a myriad of others, along with when the board meeting minutes and stuff.
So with that ramp up is why I asked to have it brought before you, is because I was made aware of those on Friday. And so on Friday, I was made aware that Dr. Schiller had made all of these requests for information, which were pretty intense as far as requesting when we had met and all these other things. And it made me kind of cause for concern. So I wanted to bring this before the board so that we didn't have any lapse of time where we're coming back in April. So that is the reason of time. So I just wanted to kind of point those things out. Ms. Campbell.
Thank you. I think I can bring us back around. Or at least I like to do that. I would like to do that. Here's the thing is that when the original contract, we said we wanted the chair to negotiate. We're not going to negotiate tonight. You don't need your attorney because this is not going to be a negotiation. We asked the chair to negotiate that. He along with our board counsel, they did that, and then from the Friday interviews to the Tuesday board meeting in December, that was negotiated, and then we voted on it that Tuesday, and it's all signed. It's attached to the agenda. But if we're going to make changes, it's my understanding that the changes were extensive enough that the chairman didn't feel comfortable making all those decisions by himself. And honestly, some of the changes that I've seen in here, I love you, Mr. Chairman, but I'm not comfortable with you making all those decisions. That's by yourself either. I mean,
Right.
and then the other option is if he did make all those decisions, negotiate, then it come back before the board, then, or if we don't agree with it, then we'd have to vote it down. And to me, what I see what's happening here is there's a couple of issues that we can just give you some direction as the chair so that you can go back and negotiate. I will go ahead and tell you, just looking at a few of I'm just going to touch on the requests. Some of these things were just some cleaning up of how the benefits go, like the retirement. Obviously, Dr. Schiller is not in FRS and he doesn't need FRS contributions. That was kind of already worked out, but it needs to be clarified. He doesn't have need of our insurance. That was already in there, but it needs to be clarified. The sick leave needs to be clarified. The original, and then the part on number 7 about civic associations needs to be clarified because we have made it very clear to him that we don't intend him to join all kinds of things and attend all kinds of things. We'll pay for the things we ask him to go to, but we want him to stay focused on internal. That was a great clarification. Those kinds of things. There's two big things to me that I feel like I need to give direction to you, Mr. Chair. I am not interested in extending the contract, the length past May 31st in the original contract. We have in here that if we want to extend it, we have 45 days, regular days, not working days, business days. It doesn't say in the contract, it says 45 days, which would be the middle of April. And I think if we feel a need at that point, we can give him 45-day notice if to ask, and he can always refuse, but I'd like to keep it at May 31st. And the other thing that came through some of the documents was the opportunity to have, and I'm not even sure if he's still interested in, but you guys can negotiate that, to have a lot of extra projects, a kind of a side contracts. I'm not interested in that as well. So I think we need to keep, the agreement was to come for equivalent benefits prorated as our former superintendent was receiving. And I think we need to leave that there. And I would, again, just prefer to keep the time of the contract to May 31st and not add any additional side projects, any kind of contracting deals. That would be my direction.
Thank you. And I think some of those things that you had mentioned, Paul and I had already worked out to define each one of those steps as far as the insurance and everything else. We went as far as finding out that Dr. Miller took the silver plan and then we gave him the silver plan. That Dr. Miller chose this, or I'm sorry, Dr. Mullins chose this dental plan and literally put that all into scope. Is that correct, Mr. Gibbs?
Yeah, I think we came up with the dollar value and said, here's what it is.
We
have the
literally
backup, yeah.
painstakingly went through exactly what Dr. Mullins was because I felt that Dr. Schiller deserved that. And then what happened is that we started negotiating past that, and that's why I came. So you didn't mention extra sick days. Are you comfortable with that?
I let you guys negotiate that, but I think we have in here.
It's beyond the sick days that he originally was
No,
receiving.
I don't think, I think, like I said, my feeling is that what we've offered and what has been agreed to by all parties is compensation commensurate to what our former superintendent was receiving. And so that's what I think we need to stick with.
Okay. Does anybody else, Miss Jenkins, do you wish to have any kind of conversation on this?
Yeah, I have a question first before I have conversation.
And just before you start, the awkwardness of it is this is the only way we can have this conversation. Is we have to have it out in the public, and it is awkward. We're just going to all acknowledge it. It's awkward, but this is the only way we can have this conversation. We can do bargaining behind closed doors, but we can't have this conversation.
Because he's not in a bargaining unit, we can't bargain inside of closed session because it's not an executive session. It's like there's no other way to do this but this way. And that's why this was what it was. So Ms. Jenkins, I'm sorry.
So before I gather my thoughts, I have a question because there's a ton of documents in here. And I can assume some of the dates on these because they're dated, but can I get some context to the order of these documents?
Mr. Gibbs can give that to you right now.
I don't want to assume them incorrectly out of order. Yes, yeah, that one I've got, but like, I don't understand the order of these. I guess as well, is there a date on this one? The last one.
It was in the email, sorry.
Okay.
There were what Tammy sent out to everybody included
Oh, I didn't
all
go
of,
there yet. I'm sorry.
okay, all of, I don't know what you're looking at then, all of the correspondence back and forth going back to the pre-contract discussion.
Okay.
So that everybody could have a full understanding of the entire process. So that's what Tammy sent to everybody. I don't know what document you're looking at.
No, that's fine. I thought these were. Yeah, I know it's fine. I'll organize myself. I have a lot of thoughts, so I'm gonna take my first time around just to echo what Ms. Campbell said. At this point, I don't see the need to extend a time frame, and I definitely don't see the need for additional duties or contracting services because that's not what we hired our interim superintendent for. I need to gather myself for the rest.
Okay. So that's two individuals that are willing to keep it the same way it is. Moving forward, go ahead, Ms. Wright. I'm sorry. I'm really not doing a good job there, so I apologize. Go ahead, Ms. Wright. Or Mr. Trent.
So obviously, having got this very last minute and going through this with the heavy schedule that we had today. And again, this is awkward because we do have to discuss this in the open. And like you, Mr. Schiller, I was reached out to by the media too, because all of this stuff is public records. Welcome to Florida. That's the way it is when it's out there. Here's what I want to say. There are components of this letter that disappoint me beyond belief. They really do. And the one that you wrote to Mr. Gibbs and Mr. Susan, the last ones.
What date is that, please?
It doesn't have a date on it.
Because
I
I
don't
was
think.
never given this packet
Well, this
that
would
you're
be a-
referring to.
This would be a letter that you sent. So I don't know, Mr. Gibbs, do you know the date on
No.
this?
His last correspondence was February 24th, 2013,
So that's the
2023.
date.
Yeah. Did
So there, to go back to this, there are components of this letter that they're disappointing to me. They are. There's no other way I can say anything other than that. They're openly speaking poorly of the board, they are speaking poorly of our firm that we have hired to search for a new superintendent. There's just, to me, I don't understand this. I don't understand why this was needed to be put into writing format and for you to not have a discussion one-on-one. I have a struggle with it.
May I respond?
I would love to hear your response. Yes.
Why is who authorized putting these documents
I
on
did.
the agenda?
I did.
Who authorized taking off the second document?
Somebody that did not have that authorization.
So then it was put on, which I find out tonight was putting back on.
For point of clarification,
Who
Dr. Schiller,
authorized
I
sending
actually
an
gave,
email
I
that
told
was
you they
not
were
part
going
of-
on. I told you they were going on the agenda at 1:40, and then you were told that that was happening.
Right. And when did
yeah.
I see any of this?
That's not the fault of mine. When you checked it, we
Yeah.
told you that it was going
Well,
on at 1:40.
why is it that late yesterday afternoon, I got an addition to some of the requests that I made for data, which I haven't even read yet? There's a simple matter. I asked for a question of clarification of 4 words. That is a threshold matter. What does the legal interpretation of "but not limited to" mean? And I had a non-response to that. If I would have gotten a response to this, I would not have advanced any of these things for months. And why is it that throughout January and February and March, over a series of emails and requests and conversations, that only tonight this was put on over my objection late afternoon? Why not when I first broached the matter? I mean, I just don't understand this. And I would say for the record, I gave to you in writing at 12:30 today, I think it was, my official acknowledgement to you that I was giving my 45 days notice to depart on May 31 as per the requirement in my EA. I only offered, since the day we first talked, to allow consistency to close out the school year, to complete myriad matters that need to be taken care of by June 30th, and not to cause a second rupture in this school district within 5 months. And I'm not doing this for the money, Lord, no. I'm not doing it for my health. I've been trying to do this for the best interest of BPS. If you would like for me to leave tomorrow, there's a clause, and my wife would be very happy. But the point being is that I don't walk away from a commitment. If you expect that you're going to appoint someone, as I've been told on May 9th, who will take operational authority of the district by May 10th, and I've been told that I don't have to worry about anything after May 10th, well, then I would be very happy to have that clarified. Because I have lots and lots of employees that report to me waiting for recommendations regarding the July 1. And now it's very clear, either I will not be here or I will not be in any position to do that. And we're going to leave literally thousands of employees in a lurch without knowing. Now, I understand you want your new person to make all these appointments, all of them. Fine. I understand you want me to do recommendations. That's fine. The recommendations carry no authority, have no weight. Your new person will come in, as I've been told, the day after the appointment. It renders anything I do moot. If that's the way it's going to be, fine. But I'm trying to do what is in the best interest of BPS. Your board policy requires that I take on the collective bargaining. Read your board policy in the 1000 series. I abide by policies. I abide by laws. I abide by statutes. I was asked by both unions early on to try to work this all the way through. Obviously, I've wasted a lot of invested time because I'm trying to fulfill your policies. And that's all. But what I'm most concerned about is that this very documents that you're working on, I never even received it. This very document that was released to, what about all of the other emails? What about the meetings that were scheduled that were canceled to discuss these matters? And if and if it turns out now, after 3 or 4 months, that none of this had been communicated with you, and that Mr. Susan did not, as board chair, have authorization to continue negotiations from a problem that started the moment that you voted on a contract, which I had not seen until the night before. And I was put under duress, as all the media was here, after you voted on it, to sign it. And I believed that honorable people who make proffers on behalf of the board had the authority to do so and ongoing for months. If Why wasn't I told that your board chair who had authorization did not have that authorization? Now put yourself in my position. Okay, I'm an interim. I've done my level best in devoting everything I could to this position. Good, bad, or indifferent, I am leaving either earlier or before, as your contract prefers. I've notified you, and I recognize, and you have the option, if you wanted to, have a mutual extension. Clearly, you don't. That's fine. But what I'm trying to do is not in my interest. Every day I've been here has not been in my best interest. It's been in the best interest of my assignment. That's what I do within the laws, statutes. The only thing I ask is some professional common courtesy. And that has not been extended.
So Mr. Schiller, Dr. Schiller, I would like to address a couple of things. One, I don't,
I don't know if she was finished. Were you finished? Because you asked a question.
I
don't know
did. I
if
don't think it got
was
answered, but it's okay.
What is the
It's-
answer?
Just,
I,
go ahead. It's fine.
Why was this one document you referred to? I'm sorry, Ms. Wright, but you did ask that question. My counter question is, why was this one document included as an email
It
and
looks
not
like it's
all the
part of it.
other emails, exchanges, or conversations, which I keep very detailed contemporaneous notes of every conversation that I have of great importance or meeting? Why was this one added unilaterally?
I think she can't answer that because that wasn't part of it. I had said that I would like to put this as an item for discussion, and Miss Tammy said that, of course, our board members would like to see all the documentation. So per Mr. Gibbs, I said, can you please send all the correspondence, emails that we have with documentation? And Mr. Gibbs did that. That's why. This is your email to us in February. So there's not like you didn't write it, you didn't understand it, you didn't know it. I want to say this, the document that I sent me into doing this today to get board direction was a series of questions that Dr. Schiller had asked last week and demanded that they give the answers on Friday of last week. And this is some of the questions. Any file during the tenure of Dr. Mullins pertaining to the setting of performance goals, objectives, and the metrics and performance pay agreements with the BOE and how they were processed when authorized. What Dr. Schiller's argument was is that he was trying to, he said that he said he should be allowed to receive Dr. Mullins's performance pay, right? And I had told him that I didn't think that that was appropriate because because of the fact that those are negotiated by the board, they are set forward towards the strategic plan, and then they were finished. So that was that piece, but he was asking for it, which is respectful. Please advise when the BOE will discuss and set performance objectives. The next question is, any language or protocols pertaining to Dr. Mullins' allocation and payment of supplement for his doctorate and superintendent certification. The question had been arised that Dr. Mullins had been receiving a doctorate supplement, and Ms. Green had come back and said that that was basically from the DOE, and that would have to be from the doctorate would have to be certified in the state of Florida, and there was all these other stipulations, so that one was still out, right? It just goes on. Please advise when these supplements were deposited. It comes down here and it starts going, please provide by March 24th, close of business day, so I may share with my attorney the following: the minutes of all regular board or work session meetings between December 15th and December 19th, when the board addresses a work session at a regular meeting, and the terms and conditions of the proposed EA to be offered to Robert Schiller. The minutes of BOE meetings reflecting the discussion of Dr. Schiller's request demands regarding EA provided the board member Susan to all his delegate, board counsel, Paul Gibbs during December 17th through March 19th. The communications between board counsel and board member Susan, both oral, written, this goes on and on. And what that did was that freaked me out, because I said, if he's asking all of these questions, then he's leveling it to the next level. So I need to get this to you guys for final decision. It goes on. Please detail the allotted time that my attorney had in order to completely due diligence regarding the draft of EA before it was placed on it. Please detail the amount of time Mr. Gibbs provided my attorney to review the board. You start talking about attorneys, I had to bring it to the board immediately. So that's the rush for it. So Mrs. Wright, you asked a question. Do you feel fulfilled in your question and answer?
No, my question wasn't answered.
Do you want to ask it again, or did you want to pass?
I'm just gonna pass at this point.
Okay.
I'll come back.
Did you want to speak, or do you want to
Yeah.
let Mr.,
Yeah,
because
Mr.
he hasn't
Trent
spoke.
has-
Mr. Trent, if you want to speak.
In reading this last document, which is, I mean, for someone to saying we're not here for the money, there's a lot here detailing
Right.
extra money. And that's, that's always, that's concerning. This is I haven't had a whole lot of time to look at this myself, but it does seem like there's a lot of effort put into. And if I were preparing to go on the offense, I would probably put something together like this myself. Not saying that's what is happening, but if I were going to do that, I would ask for minutes and conversations regarding a contract that I'm not here for the monetary value, but it seems like that's what is being set up. That's my fear. So if
So
you
I
can
would like to,
speak to it.
oh, sorry.
No, I'm
Hang
done.
on. I would like, wait, hang on. I would like to suggest, I do want to address a couple of things that Dr. Schiller said, because I think it's important moving forward, because we've, just to clear up. But I would like to suggest, since it's late and my go to bed alarm just went off, and we have a meeting on Thursday already scheduled, and it's clear that all the board members haven't read through everything and might need to have some conversations with Paul or Dr. Schiller or whoever before we have a full conversation. I would suggest we move it to Thursday to discussion. If you don't feel like you have enough, if we don't feel like we have enough direction to give Mr. Susan right now.
I think you did a good job of giving direction.
I mean, I did, but I don't know if everybody agrees with me, but I would address two things. One, I'm not going to question whether or not someone told you that the new superintendent will take office on May 10th. They shouldn't have. They can make that assumption, that opinion. But if there is a board member who thinks they already know who it's going to be, the rest of us don't know, and it takes three. So I don't question whether or not you were told that, because maybe you were. But as far as the realistic idea that somebody would be ready to step in and do it, it's not going to be there. And I'll go back, and I think I said this with you before. We actually have in the minutes from our meeting a couple of meetings ago that the majority of the board asked you to go ahead and do the reappointments on May 9th. To go ahead and do that and not to leave recommendations for the next superintendent. So I guess we could change our minds, but it's my understanding, and I went back and checked the minutes, that's what we asked you to pick up. I think because we do get people limbo, so I'll go back and pull that email or find the minutes again. But that was not what our recommendation was. But with that, I would say, can we move to Thursday, or anybody else want to just go ahead and give theirs right
The reason
now?
is that we can't give board direction on a day that we're not there. So that's why I brought it right here. I would like to say that at no time was Dr. Schiller told by me that May 9th was the last day that we would need him, and that a new superintendent would be here, or that anybody would be named to be superintendent on that day or anywhere close to it. So
Well, the superintendent will be named by the second.
right, but taking over, and I don't know. Miss Jenkins, did you want to? I'll be honest, Dr. Schiller, like I was looking through this and I was extremely concerned about, okay, there's stuff here. Please provide the details of the salary offer. Please please provide the details of the salary offer. 300,000 as acting board chairman. Mr. Susan had made to Rev Schiller multiple times. Like it starts speaking to that. But then where I got really concerned, and to be honest with you, sir, like I had no problem with me bringing these to the board for you to make these relations to possibly do this work as far as giving these reports, because that's what you've done for a living. But when I got this and I'm looking at it and you're asking 3 times the total amount contribution for short-term disability, 3 times the amount for long-term disability, 3 times his accident plan, 3 times all of the gold plan, which you didn't take, and Mullins only took the silver plan. It just started to get kind of out of control. But I think where Mrs. Wright was speaking is that gummit. I mean, you go on this diatribe on the FSBA, and then you also go on this where you attack us as board members, and it's difficult to take that as part of a negotiation that you were sending across the table. And I think that's what Ms. Wright was trying to ask you was, can you explain your illicit conversation that says in this note to illustrate some points, I have not received inquiry calls from prospective candidates, most superintendents, and it goes on and you attack the board here. I mean, you go on and you move on the board. And I've never, it's just that. Anyways, Ms. Jenkins, go ahead. I lost where it was at, so I was going to refer to it, but I didn't do a good job.
I'm not opposed to moving to Thursday because I don't know if everyone up here is ready to really give direction and have this conversation, but I do have some thoughts. So the reason I waited was because I was trying to filter things. I don't have concerns with what was said in the document because nice things weren't said about me either. Like that, I honestly don't care about when it comes to like personal comments. I have concerns about other things that were in that document. I brought my concerns to this board on January 9th pretty explicitly, but I feel like we're kind of reflected in that document. No one wanted to hear me about them. Again, it's not about the criticisms. Again, I've taken them personally myself. I truly don't care about the personal part of it. It's I won't forgive myself if I'm not honest, so I'm just going to be honest. Listen, I was honest on January 9th. I had concerns like immediately after we made this decision. No one wanted to hear me out. I had concerns for our staff. I had concerns for some financial decisions about contracting services and hiring a contractor. And when I asked questions about the contractor, then all of a sudden the contractor didn't have a contract anymore. I brought all of these concerns to you guys. I asked you to have questions with staff to figure it out yourself. And so when I started seeing this stuff, like I'm super glad you brought it to our attention. I'm really glad you did. Like, thank you. But like it literally rings bells for exactly what I was concerned about back on January 9th. I'm concerned about the liability for the district. And that's where I'm going to leave it if we're going to table this to Thursday.
I don't think
I need to process. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to like stop and then start again, but there's other things that were just sent to us that I didn't have enough time to review that I think I need to look at and understand and process more in the mix of all of this.
What would you be referring to that was sent to us so that I know, so that I can?
Yeah, sorry. It's what you just read them out loud, but I need to process them and read them in totality. So the requests, the list of the requests, I guess I'll call it. I don't know what to call it. There's no title.
I don't think there's any concern over what those requests were. They were just, what they were was just, I felt like it had gotten to a point that we just needed to address this issue because of those requests. That was the only.
I hear you. I have concern about them in the totality of my own concerns I had starting in January, along with the other things that are presented. So I need time to process that in the timeline of everything that's been happening.
So I don't think, so just so everybody knows, the reason Dr. Schiller had mentioned going to Thursday, we can't give board direction on Thursday because it was noticed as a workshop. We can't do that. It's a voting, it has to be a vote. So like you guys have to say, we will, right, it has, but
We can give you consensus. We do that all the time. We're not going to be voting on the contract. That'll have to come back to us after you negotiate it. So we can have this conversation on Thursday, correct, Paul?
You can provide consensus, yes, and the board can't take any action.
Okay. Ms. Jenkins, I appreciate what you said, and in January you did allude to some issues, and you were vague enough that there's problems, but wasn't really clear on what the problems were. And I guess what I would say is at that point, you would have to realize and recognize that the relationship that our new board members, myself being one of them, had with staff at that time was significantly different than the one that you have. And so I think that that might have hindered the research into, is there issues? There are issues. You're not wrong. There are issues. And this email, this message, I don't know how we recover from that. I don't know how we say, hey, Dr. Schiller, it's awesome that you put an email out there for the world to see where you bashed us and you bashed FSBA and you made comments that were just not favorable towards people that you're working with. I don't know how you recover from that. And so my concern is, what does this look like if we don't handle this tonight? What does this look like for staff? Because I do have concerns. So I think it needs to be addressed tonight. I think it needs to be resolved tonight.
May I respond? I
Yes.
did not put this document out. I've had hundreds of hours of conversations by phone and on emails with your board chair on a variety of things over the last 4 or 5 months. Why this particular document was chosen to be identified, I don't know. I don't want to get into my observations because there are a lot of observations that have been made in a lot of conversations with not just the board chair, with a number of board members. And, you know, this was wrong from the first day. Absolutely wrong. It was wrong for me and it was wrong for you. I was told in that one-to-one, first thing within the first 20 seconds, I was not that individual's choice. Well, one down. January, you know, and from the moment of that lack of communication or lack of full disclosure with regard to the contract, without being able to even see a copy of the draft contract before it was being ordered to be in front of me, a piece of paper to put on the board agenda. My goodness. I mean, it's been wrong from day one, but I've persevered for this. I don't walk away. I'll lose battles, but I'm going to win a war. I've been pushed to the point where what else do I have to do in order to get some information? This matter that you're raising about opportunities to consider an expansion of beyond what a simple one-time benefit rested on a hinge point of what does a language mean when it says, I don't have the exact language here because I don't have the document that you have. But what does it mean? What do the 4 words mean, but not limited to? And of course, I asked for a legal interpretation from your board counsel, and all I got back, you want to say it so I don't put words in your mouth, Mr. Gibbs?
I believe my response was the board has not asked me for a legal interpretation. I'm not going to advise you.
Okay,
in a
so how
negotiation.
do I frame then anything when I can't get a simple response to 4 words, but not limited to? I mean, folks, I've been trying to get these things done behind the scenes, but obviously, you know, for whatever political reason or personal reason, it's been expedited to tonight. You've talked about no surprises. Do you think this was a surprise to me? And not even getting the same documents you have, and some document going on the agenda, then taking off the agenda and putting on again? I mean, it works 2 ways. If, you know, we should have walked away from each other that weekend after I got the phone call on, was it December 17th or so? But no, stupid me. I gave up other opportunities I was committed to because I thought I could help here of a district that was in a situation that was in.
For
I
the
said-
record, I asked for the documents to be removed from the agenda item. And they were the ones that besides the contracts, because I didn't think they were appropriate to be out on a public agenda.
Okay, but how did they get back in?
The only things that are on the agenda are your original contract, which we voted on and signed, and there's a red line version.
And the reason that staff thought that it was appropriate to put it on there was because it was your last response during the conversation of all of these items.
It was not my
No,
last
well,
response.
It's the last, Mr. Gibbs, is this the last response that we received from him regarding his contract?
That's the last formal counter proposal. We did have
Okay.
that meeting on the phone,
Yeah.
and we've had, there was like, I believe, one other meeting that you were on the phone or you were in his office. I don't recall.
No.
No,
And what about all the successive updates that I tried to offer so we didn't have this moment throughout February and March?
I'm not ready to have this decision tonight. I don't,
I understand, but Dr. Schiller, you consistently changed the goalposts to move to
Exactly,
include other
trying
things.
to simplify
No,
because
this
as
was
time
not
went on.
simplifying. It was not simplifying. And I'll be
Okay,
honest,
but then why did some of those conversations enter into this February 10th document as opposed to others not being there?
Dr. Schiller, we put every document that was a correspondence back and forth that was there. I don't know why it is that you have conversations wrapped around not understanding the document. They were, I mean, this is your document that you sent. You owned it because you did it. I have some severe complex problems with what I'm reading inside of it, and I keep reading it more and more, and it becomes more and more evident. There's been some other developments, most recently today, series of emails that we've received over and over again that have escalated the idea that Mrs. Jenkins has mentioned as far as a culture that we're dealing with. Ms. Jenkins, I wanted to let you know that I did reach out to staff that day, and just so you know, on January 9th, you had mentioned that. And I said explicitly, I said, I apologize for any of the actions that you may have taken the wrong way. And then I actually sat here for an entire week to make sure that everything went smooth for the entire week and that there wasn't. So I wanted to let you know that as board chair, I was committed to your request. The other thing is that there's been some recent developments in both some accusations, Dr. Schiller, that have gone on. And at this time, I just, my concern is that I truly believe that we've come to a place where we may have to put you on administrative leave just to get through all of these allegations, accusations, and everything else to get them wrapped up and then bring you back if they clear out. But there's a significant starting to pile that I got two today that I verified that I'm starting to get that concern. So
Sure.
I would
And
like to.
like I said, the contract provides for.
I
And I would be very happy. No, I wouldn't be happy.
Okay, Dr. Schiller, if I
I've
could
had
just finish my conversation, then I'll give you all the floor. I would like to make it to where I'm concerned about a bunch of different things. I think this is an opportunity that we have. I would like to say if we can move to put Dr. Schiller on administrative leave so that we can then evaluate all of the different accusations and all the different stuff, get it wrapped up, and then bring him back on, or you know what I mean, based on the accusations that I've seen and I've verified today, maybe move in a different direction. So
You
I'd
had
like to
even
have the-
said in your, here there'd be no decisions tonight. And now you're going to make a decision unilaterally
No,
when
I'm
you
just
said.
asking, I'm just at a point where I think
Yeah.
that that's the
Well,
best case
I had
scenario right
offered
now.
to you, and you have a contract there that said you can terminate at any time you want, and I could give notice. I gave you notice today. If you wish for me not to be here, then abide by the terms of the contract. I mean, you know, why now do you want to take this kind of unilateral action? I mean, and, you know, and I feel really badly wondering if some of the other actions that have been taken now and what will be taken to some staff is because of some disagreement you have with me
No,
about some individual who.
Dr. Schiller, please, like I'm not, this is just snowballing and
I
I'm
know.
just at a point where
And
I wanted to
asked you
say.
not to go
I would
into
like
this so it wouldn't snowball tonight.
Can you, well, Dr. Schiller, I brought up a simple facts and then all of a sudden moved into this. Is there anybody else that wants to second that motion?
Yeah, I'll second
I'll
the motion.
second it.
All right. Is there any discussion for the motion?
Yeah, hold on.
The motion was to put Dr. Schiller on administrative leave. So We got a second, Ms. Jenkins.
I think I need to be, so
There is, you're right. You're right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I keep hearing people are upset with like the personal attacks in here, and I'm going to circle back to that doesn't matter, right?
Nope.
It might hurt people's feelings, but it doesn't matter. It's not like this was intentionally posted into the public. What does matter is the other things inside of here. And because we are where we are right now, I'm going to bring up my concerns and be explicit again. On January 9th, I brought up my concerns about, and then subsequently in email, Mr. Susan, you were CC'd on those emails, not by me, obviously. My concern about the conversation about hiring a consultant. And I was very concerned about the relationship with this consultant. I was concerned why we were hiring a consultant 7 days in after, or not even 7 days, whatever, very small amount of time after we just got an interim superintendent. I was concerned that we were already going to start this behavior in which we were going to start just creating opportunities for consulting businesses. That really concerned me. And when I asked very explicit questions, and it's an email, it's public record, I think I actually responded it. I forwarded on to all of you because it got sent to Mr. Susan. I felt like that wasn't fair. Those questions were never answered. It was a response of, oh, this person fell ill and is no longer asking for the contract the next day. That always rubbed me the wrong way. I am always honest and I tell it like it is. And I feel like I have to, because we're here. I have to do it. We hired 2 additional employees that I was very vocal about. I don't understand why we're reorganizing. And it has been said that these employees were instructed to write reports of the divisions that they're overseeing as if they're doing contracting services. That's very strange to me. I don't think we hired you for that. I don't think that's in your job description. I'm sure you were told to do that. I'm not blaming the people who are doing it. But it's weird to me. It doesn't make any sense. And so the personal attacks and the stalking don't bother me. What bothers me is like the subsequent potential solicitation for consult services. And the reason I was vague on January 9th was because it's uncomfortable, because it was brand new. And quite frankly, I didn't think everybody was going to listen to me and agree and hear what I had to say. And also, I was really concerned about our staff. Really, really, really concerned. And I was scared that there would be retaliation. I promised them I wouldn't be explicit with the things that they had shared with me. That was why I was vague. So I appreciate you reaching out on your own. And that's why I said that, because I felt like it was not it was shared in confidence with me. It wasn't anyone complaining to me. I had reached out to them. I felt the need to say that on record because we got here. Because again, I think it's important to step away from the personal side of this document because that's not really relevant. It concerns me. And again, going back to the reorg and hiring and paying people more money than our employees that are already here, like these were all things that I've said to you guys from day one since January 9th. It's concerning to me. These decisions were concerning to me. I couldn't justify them. And as frustrated as I am that no one was listening to me, I'm grateful, again, that you brought these forward to us. Because it does bother me. And I told you guys on January 9th that I was concerned about legal ramifications. And here we are. I really was deeply concerned. I think that was pretty evident.
I would, I apologize.
No,
I would say that there are some other things that are there that I would like to not mention in public. I would like to just investigate, do that kind of stuff, and then let Dr. Schiller know. So there's a motion on the table. There's a second. Can I get all in favor signify by saying aye? Or would you like to speak? I'm sorry, I didn't see you go for the mic.
Question. No,
Yeah,
because I just want to make sure that I understand and we all understand what the ramifications of the, leave. It's an indefinite leave as of
No, it's a leave until we can, there are other things that besides what Ms. Jenkins had mentioned that I'd like
Okay.
to look into. I don't want to say them publicly. I
Okay.
would like to just work on those
And then I would
for the
be,
respect of Dr.
I would
Schiller.
like to ask Mr. Gibbs what that, I mean, we have to have someone here to sign things and whatever, and would we have a deputy? It's an interim deputy, but would our interim deputy qualify for someone who can sign documents and,
If she would accept the
That's the second part of this
designation, so she would
conversation,
have
Ms.
to
Campbell.
accept that designation.
okay.
Ms. Campbell, we would have to.
I know, but I just want to make sure we understand that we're going to have to decide that tonight
Tonight.
if we
Yep.
do that.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. You good?
Yeah.
I just want to make a clarifying statement about what I said too. And I know you're talking about something different that you don't want to talk about publicly.
Yes, because
and-
you've already publicly said those, and I think that's
wanted-
appropriate.
Yeah, and I wanted to say this publicly right here now because if we're voting on something, I want to justify why I'm doing it because it seems to be coming out of nowhere to the public. And I just want to make it clear, like my opinion is not coming out of nowhere. My opinion started back in January.
Neither.
And I felt like that was important. I don't want to air it out, which is why I took the opportunity at the offsite where there wasn't a ton of public paying attention to have that conversation. Because again, it had to be in the sunshine.
No, thank you very much. We have a vote on the table. All signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Dr. Schiller, we'll reach out to you. The next thing is that we have to choose to have somebody as an interim. I would like to suggest that Sue Han become the interim person to do exactly what you just said, to fill the acting superintendent. We can have discussion about that, but I think that Ms. Sue Han is the only individual that we can all agree with.
Can we get a
Ms. Sue
correct
Han,
title?
will you accept if we ask you to be the superintendent acting?
Is that the correct title, Paul?
Whatever it is. At this point, it's almost 11 o'clock at night. It's
Acting
just-
superintendent or designee?
Designate.
That would make more sense.
Yeah. Whatever costs us the least.
Just so you know, even when the mics aren't on, YouTube picks everything up.
Ms. Han.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, if you would request my assistance, I'll be happy to help.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
I second that motion.
Okay. Since there's no objections and I don't see any discussion on it, I'd like to call a question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Right, votes. I think we have board direction. Thank you very much. Everybody good? Any other issues?
Is there anything else on the agenda?
Nope,
That's it?
we're done. All right, let's go.
Welcome to Palm Bay Live, celebrating 2 years in business.